across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk with the Home of Common Sense. It's exactly 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and we're at 11 o'clock then, wishing my hours away. No, absolutely not. Great to have you joining us, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device. Thank you very much. And if you miss anything from the show over the next few hours, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you'll never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this, you don't want to miss it. We're going to discuss the Green Party being investigated for over more than 30 council candidates for alleged anti-Semitism. I mean, you say even they are admitting it because they're investigating them themselves. No doubt at all that the Zach Polanski bubble has burst in terms of his own personal poll ratings. Plus, we'll discuss the Prime Minister's woes as now the Labour's First Minister of Wales, Baroness Morgan, says Keir Starmer could cost them the election. This is after the Scottish leader in Scotland, obviously of Labour Party, Anna Sarwar, has said exactly the same only a couple of months ago. Also going to be talking about what the hell is happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump has paused Project Freedom, as he called it, the operation to guide vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, because he says great progress has been made towards a deal with Iran. He says he's done it at the behest of the Pakistani mediators. However, the Iranians have claimed this is a great victory for them. So what the hell is going on? And a new poll has found that 2/3 of Gen Z adults, so I think the 16 plus to late 20s, are totally unaware what VE Day is. They do not know that VE, which stands for Victory in Europe, what that marks. And they read how the hell you can finish, what is it, 14 years of compulsory education and not know that that's the end of the Second World War is a bit of an indictment not only of the youngsters but also of their parents and their schools. We'll be talking about that a little bit later as well. I'm delighted to say joining me today for the whole show is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. You should have seen his face when I read that last bit out. Absolutely shocking, that, isn't it, Philip?
Completely shocking.
What the hell's going on in our education system?
Well, it's a failure of society, and it's not just VE, it's history and understanding history. How can you understand politics and where politics has come from and how it's moved? And
I bet they know all about slavery, though, don't they? And why we should pay reparations to the Caribbean countries.
But they won't know the reality. They'll know whatever the spin is.
Seriously, there's a reason. A lot of teachers go, like, oh, we don't get paid enough. No, you don't get paid enough because a lot of you, I'm afraid, are not doing a very good job.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you really, really aren't. That is simple as that.
The curriculum's bad if it's not teaching this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is in the curriculum. And if it isn't, someone needs to be taken out and shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Quite literally taken out and shot. Yes, feel free to complain. I genuinely do think that. Let's talk about local elections tomorrow, because we can't talk about it tomorrow, obviously.
Are there local elections on?
Yeah, there are local elections
on.
Now,
I'd have never guessed.
I say this in the context that we're all talking about it ad nauseum, okay? Yeah. And it's not just local elections in large parts of England. It's the whole of London. I think there's 6 moralities and various other parts. A lot of them actually big sort of county councils having elections, but of course the Welsh Senate elections, the Scottish Parliament elections.
Yes.
So we've got a lot of elections going on. Nevertheless, the vast majority of the country will not be voting. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the country who actually are entitled to a vote tomorrow will still not be voting.
Exactly.
And it is important to remember that. Now, I think that's a travesty. I think that there should be compulsory voting, both at general and at local elections. Personally, I just think that is a small price to ask for living in a democratic state. You may find actually that people's real needs are represented rather better when everybody has a vote, but not under 18s because they're children. Those are my views. But here's the thing. I really don't care who you vote for, as long as you vote. I really have always felt very strongly about that. Genuinely, vote for who you want tomorrow, or maybe I do a postal vote, do what you want, but have your say. If you have a right to vote, people are still dying for that right. Here's the thing then. We have seen the explosion of the Reform Party in the last year or so, not just at the general election, but their polls continue to go up and up. OK, they've stabilised around the high 20s, but you know, what will happen at a general election. Lots of people are predicting in 2029, if it comes sooner, who knows, there could end up being a coalition government, either on the left or the right. We'll see what happens there. But there's no doubt at all, Reform are taking a lot of votes from the Tories. They're also taking quite a lot of votes from Labour in the Red Wall. Hence, we've got this warning that Keir Starmer could actually cost not just votes in the Red Wall and in Scotland, but also in Wales. Labour have been in charge of Wales since...
ever since the Senate existed.
Yeah, exactly. 27 years. And they're saying, like, that could be over now. But we've also got the creep up of the Green Party. And there is no doubt at all that Zach Polansky, for quite a long time, was given an extraordinarily easy ride. I mean, like, oh, isn't he lovely? This sort of like, he's like a big Labrador, isn't he? And he just sort of like, you know, he lollops along and he cares about taxing the tax the rich. Well, given most of us aren't rich. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, tax them, not me. Give money to the poor, be nice to people. You know, legalise a few things like drugs that people like. Yeah, brilliant. Lots of people are like that. Oh, and Greens. Totally and utterly subsumed by the anti-Semitism rows involved there. Their bizarre link up with the pro-Palestinian cause. Barely any mention of green issues. I mean, I've certainly seen no mention of collecting my bins by anybody, certainly even in the local leaflets I've had in my area where we've got a vote. But my question today to our audience is, has Zach Polansky's Green Party bubble burst amid not just the anti-Semitism claims, but also actually now people have got a bit more knowledge about their radical policies on a huge number of issues? Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one standard network rate message. You can get in touch on X at talkTV as well. But Philip Ingram, is this a problem with party leaders who are given lovely little soft soapy sort of Vaseline around the lens sort of treatment, like Keir Starmer was for a number of years before he became elected, Zach Polansky as well, and actually it all goes, technical term here, tits up when they actually get a little bit of actually either power and have to do something, or they actually get questioned about their views. A
little bit of scrutiny. And this is what's coming with Zach Polansky. Whilst the Green Party had barely one MP, and barely...
No, I think they've got six.
They've got six now, but for years they'd barely one MP, and you could count the number of council seats that they had on the fingers of two hands maximum across the country. They could be the party of protest. They could say what they wanted. They could make up things, and nobody would question them. They'd just laugh and go, you're irrelevant.
Yeah, free car to everybody. Never going to have to actually deliver.
All of a sudden now that the polls are saying that they're going to get a good chunk of the vote on the left, then they're having to be a bit more serious, and people are applying a bit more scrutiny. And as they apply the scrutiny, they're finding all of these little things that the party of protest would not want people to find because they didn't care about them before.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, we already knew from a long while back when Zach Polansky came onto the national scene about him being in a Sun article. He says he was approached by the Sun journalist, but presumably they'd heard that he was willing to do this. They're not going to randomly go, they're not sending a reporter to some random guy in Harley Street and say, could you believe you can make my breasts bigger through hypnotherapy, hypnotising me? And he claimed he could do that, and certainly a few days after that, he also claimed he could still do that. He's now said, no, he shouldn't have done that, it was wrong. At the time, he also claimed that he had been a full member of the National Council of Hypnotherapy while working as a hypnotherapist. That he made that claim to a number of potential clients. That is also not true. And yesterday, it's emerged that he'd falsely claimed to be a spokesman for the British Red Cross while crowdfunding his campaign to be deputy leader of the Green Party before, of course, he became leader. Now, this hasn't been exposed by nasty right-wing journalists. It was exposed by, the British Red Cross. You went, no, you weren't. You were never a spokesman. Now, we've had, Labour cabinet ministers who've been confused about whether or not they were a solicitor or not. Now, I'm sorry.
Or involved in running accounts. Rachel Reeves and her exaggerations.
What was my job at HBOS? And how long did I work at the Bank of England? I find it extraordinary that people, A, tell lies about these things, B, that they don't think they'll ever be found out, and see that they think that when people expose them for these lies, that it's just it's just scaremongering, digging and right. But the reality is, if you lie about little things like that, and bearing in mind he is an actor actor. He was a failed actor. Among the things he's failed at, we are legitimately allowed to say, what the hell else do you routinely lie about?
Well, exactly. And at the end of the day, if he is exaggerating something that he has done to create a better position for him that he can benefit from, that is fraud by misrepresentation. Full stop. Black and white. It's a criminal offence. And therefore, I'm surprised Rachel Reeves hasn't been prosecuted. And
you'd be sacked. Anybody else would be sacked.
Correct.
If I claimed to have a qualification I do not have on a technical, I would. If that was one of the reasons why I got the job. And Labour certainly absolutely massively touted, didn't they? We got Rachel Reeves. She was a Bank of England economist. She was there 10 years. Oh, she must be good then.
Yeah, well, exactly, and she wasn't.
She's
so
in the
we
complaints
have to hold Zach Polanski to exactly the same standards that we've been holding Rachel Reeves to.
Yeah.
But the one thing that is quite clear, and all the rest of it, is that he is increasing the size of the tits that are out there, and those are the ones that are supporting him. He's creating more large tits that support him.
Well, also, they keep saying, like, we haven't got a problem with anti-Semitism. The Green Party themselves are investigating more than 30 council candidates for alleged anti-Semitism.
Internal investigations.
I mean, again, we can't name any councillors or candidates. We can't name any areas because there are very strict rules about that. Now, I'll basically just be reading out names of every candidate in the world if we did that. But we're talking about, claiming that Israelis and Jews are cockroaches, that they were behind the October 7th attack, that they were behind the 9/11 atrocities, that a terrorist who stabbed 2 Jews to death in 2016 was a martyr. Extraordinary amount of things. Claims that ramming a synagogue full of children wasn't anti-Semitism. It was revenge. Sharing a picture of a Hamas terrorist alongside the slogan "Resistance is freedom." I mean, really nasty stuff. Now, Zach Polanski did a big interview with BBC this morning. I mean, he carries on with his usual nonsense about there being an ongoing genocide in Gaza. I mean, A, there wasn't a genocide. B, ongoing. I mean, most of Gaza is currently controlled by Hamas, so presumably you're claiming that Hamas is genociding the Palestinian people. I thought they were the resistance fighters for them, hey? But do you think that is the reason why we have seen the exposés of this? The poll ratings for Zach Polanski as a personality have absolutely plummeted. I mean, they were down like 14 points over the weekend. A lot of this, many think, is his criticism of the Metropolitan Police after that anti-Semitic attack, or attack on 2 Jews, stabbing attack, and when the police were attempting to arrest the suspect, kick him in the head. Now, a lot of us were quite shocked, and on the next day, I asked a police officer guest, would this be normal form? Now, you're trained military man. Yeah. When you saw that video, given the context, they knew this man was wanted for stabbing people, going on a stabbing rampage, and he still had the knife in his hand. I mean, Zach Polanski wrongly claimed this morning that he was handcuffed at the time. No, he wasn't.
He wasn't.
What did you make of that video? What do you make of Zach Polanski's criticism of the police?
Well, Zach Polanski's criticism of the police, I'll start with that, was naive and misinformed. The police officers that went in, because the video went out, I suddenly went, oh, that's not going to look good. However, from the police officers' perspective that were going in, they had a suspect who had been accused of stabbing 2 individuals. They believed they stabbed them. They thought the individual had a potential IED in his backpack. Because
this is often the form that they...
Exactly. And therefore, if they'd been armed police officers, the immediate action drill for that is 2 bullets to the head. Not shooting at the mass, it's 2 bullets to the head. Because that's how you stop someone potentially detonating an IED. Yeah. They weren't armed, they weren't doing that, they'd use tasers. Tasers can cause you to actually push the button if you've got a click button on it. You want to render the individual unconscious as quickly as possible because that stops them from doing things. To render someone unconscious, you have to hit them as hard as you possibly can in the head. There's no other way of doing it. Kicking them in the head, perfectly legitimate.
Thank you. And he knows what he's doing. We're armchair generals. He knows what he's doing. And again, that was interesting how the Metropolitan Police Chief came straight out, didn't he? Yeah. Certainly a lot of criticism about that. And again, also, and we'll talk a bit later about, the various different frankly insane green policies, legalising all drugs, heroin, prostitution, you name it.
There's another very worrying thing about this, especially whenever you get parties that rocket up like this. We've got a number of different countries around the world that are sitting watching our politics and they want to disrupt it. And the disruptors are getting in and influencing. And they'll influence individual candidates. They'll influence little posts that they put out. They'll influence other bits and pieces. So a lot of these individuals that are being investigated may well have been influenced by hostile nation states who are very, very good and very well trained.
The bots are very convincing.
At manipulating things. It's not just the bots.
Yeah.
It's people will get in there, and there'll be money behind it, and there'll be deliberate activity going on.
And why do foreign states? I mean, again, we talk about Iran. You know, Iran is sort of the issue. You know, behind the cost of living aspects of the latest rise that we've seen. A terror law is going to be brought in post that Gold Screen attack to treat Iranian proxies as foreign spies, facing up to 14 years behind bars, even if they don't know that that's the person who paid them. Yeah, they won't. I mean, they won't. Simple as that. I'll tell you that people will barely be prosecuted on that. But what is the purpose of your likes of your China, your Iran, your Russia to do this? Because it's not just Islamist countries doing this. No. Other countries do it because it does foment discord in our nation.
The two biggest countries behind it at the moment are Iran and Russia. But China does it in a slightly different way. But what has Iran got to do with it? Iran sees its biggest enemy as Israel. They want to create as much anti-Israeli sentiment as possible. They want that to translate from domestic pressure into political pressure that becomes international pressure, where
stop America funding
where
their
you stop America funding, you stop support for America's support for Israel, you create as much disruption as possible internally, and of course whenever then America goes and carries out actions against Iran and all that, look at the number of countries that withdrew their support. That was directly influenced by Iran, by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Spain, Ireland,
and the UK, Keir Starmer. They're very, very, very good at it. The Russians want to create disruption in our political system, to create political discourse and fractures, so that they can look at ways of putting their proverbial knife in and wiggling that and making those fractures bigger.
And our politicians are falling for it.
Oh yeah, and it takes up more political capital dealing with these issues. As that political capital is taken up, that is then not being used to focus on what Russia's doing elsewhere. So that it's hiding a lot of its activity in the noise that it's creating itself.
So when people talk about there is a conspiracy, yes, there is. It's just by a hostile nation state.
And it's deliberate actions. You know, an awful lot of what's going on behind the pro-Palestinian causes and protests that are going on out in the street has been orchestrated by Iran. And people trying to get a direct connection is very difficult, but it's been orchestrated by them deliberately to cause disruption, and it's worked. They're very good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I was very pleased to see yesterday a number of the Palestine Action protesters who, I think 4 of the 6 who were on retrial for that raid on an Israeli-linked defence firm being found guilty, but one in particular found guilty of GBH. For hitting a police officer on her back with a sledgehammer during a raid when she was no risk to him and she was simply trying to hang.
And the shocking thing is it's taken a retrial. You know,
that's a big issue for me.
And again,
that's that propaganda.
Correct. It's the manipulation.
The jury is seeing.
It's the manipulation of the juries, and we are having our whole democratic system manipulated. You know, I've written about this on numerous occasions, and what I've written about is described as hacking your serotonin. And people turn and say, "Oh, I can't fall for anything," and all the rest of it. And
they're the same people who think they don't fall for adverts.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that. You know, I look at people of a certain age, and I say, if I say to you, "Hands that do dishes," you've got a smile on your face.
Exactly.
You can hear the music. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the brand that's in there. You know Linda.
I've got another one there.
Yeah, exactly. You know Linda Bellingham going off and all the rest of it, and you smile, and I've just changed the chemistry in your brain by reminding you of an advert.
It's not just it makes you think of the product; it actually affects your brain.
No, because you've smiled and you feel happy and you feel good about it and you feel nostalgic. That's changing the chemistry in your brain. Now think of nation states being able to use everything in social media and all that, and know what makes you tick by understanding more about you, by analysing everything that's online. They can change the way you think.
You scared yet? I know I am. I wonder who is also scared facing into those elections tomorrow. Keir Starmer. We had Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, openly stating at a press conference just a couple of months ago, you know, Keir Starmer needs to go. He's the problem. Now we've got the leader of the Welsh Labour Party, this is Baroness Yned Morgan, saying basically that for the first time in its 27 history, you know, Keir Starmer could cost the Labour Party the Senate. She says the Prime Minister comes up as an issue on the doorstep and could be to blame for their party's suspected wipeout in the election on Thursday. There was a lot of talk of Reform doing very well there. Now it looks like Plaid Cymru may well be able to just about take the Senate. Yeah. And we should see, voters have a habit of making their own decisions, but certainly in low turnout elections, it is those who feel very strongly about issues who are more likely to vote, and therefore that does boost smaller parties.
And of course,
usually.
in Scotland and Wales, 16-year-olds can vote as well.
Yes.
So they're being
well
manipulated.
done there.
Yes.
Well, I love the fact that in England, Labour are going, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that because it turns out 16-year-olds might vote Green. Well, are you saying you were doing it just to boost your own vote? They shouldn't vote because they're children.
Exactly.
It's really that simple.
Exactly.
But I mean, do you think that that we are going to see Keir Starmer ousted? Because there's lots of talk of Angela Rayner on the prowl. I mean, lots of people saying there's a massive Stop Angie campaign because basically the bond markets would go crazy. There's now talk of a Trojan horse plot to smuggle Andy Burnham back into Westminster. They basically want to hold things for now. Couple of people are willing to stand down from their seats in return for him being basically parachuted in as the candidate. In what it would have to be a safe Labour seat. You have to have the NEC would agree. They vetoed it last time under Keir Starmer's direction. Would they do that this way? Not because we still have the same issue, which is that if he leaves, you've then got the Greater Manchester Mayor's job up for grabs. But there are a lot of people seem to think he's your best bet on the polling. The left will vote for him. He's not going to scare the horses. But again, and I like him as a person. I think he's been a very good advocate, certainly during lockdown, for the people of Manchester. There's a reason why he stood twice and been rejected twice.
Yes, there is. I think Keir Starmer is under danger. I think one of the problems that there is with our political system in this country, and a lot of this has been started by what the Labour attack dogs on the Tories when they were in coalition and then in power, is this desire to change the Prime Minister at every opportunity.
Yeah.
And that is not good for the country. However, Keir Starmer has not, with Keir Starmer goes his inner team. He has not covered himself in any glory whatsoever because he has lied to us at every occasion.
100%.
And he's not acting in the national interest. And therefore, from a national interest perspective, he is dangerous to this country and he has to go. I think it's wrong that we do keep changing prime ministers, but I'm scared about where he'd take us if he stays in. With him, with Rachel Reeves and with Lord Hermer.
What's interesting is the bond markets seem to decide our borrowing costs
and the bond
over 100 billion a year, by the way. That's just the interest on those borrowing costs. But they appear to be a lot more worried about Rachel Reeves going than if she stays. No matter how useless she is, she's not as dangerous as, say, Ed Miliband.
Well, yeah, part of the problem is what comes next, and this is where the bond markets will be getting really worried, because Ed Miliband as Prime Minister or as Chancellor would be completely mad. Angela Rayner as Prime Minister. Oh, sorry.
I say it'd be fun for the week it lasted. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Philip Ingram, thank you very much. Absolutely fascinating analysis from you, particularly of where we are with that foreign influence in our politics. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Zach Polanski's Green Party. Has the bubble burst amid not just anti-Semitism claims, but also a lot of their radical policies? We'll talk about that with Brendan O'Neill in a few moments as well. Also going to talk about whether your holiday flight this summer could actually be cancelled, and should we basically ban the drinking in the airports? 2-pint limit in the airports is what Ryanair's Michael O'Leary has called for. But I don't know why, because it's actually illegal for his staff to let drunk people on planes. So why does he keep having problems with drunk people on his planes? Why are his staff letting them on in the first place? We'll talk about all that coming up. This is Talk.
Kinnock felt the Labour Party. He changed the Labour Party. He thought he might be the Prime Minister in 92. We didn't win. But he had that feeling for the Labour Party. That doesn't exist with Keir Starmer, I'm afraid. Look, I often say, Jeremy, the Labour Party is the nearest thing I've got to a religion. But if the Labour Party was the Church of England, Keir Starmer would be the chief executive of it.
But he's the God. It means he's your God right now.
Well, he's not the spiritual leader, is my point.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram is still with me, just scaring the living daylights out of all of us about Iranian and Russian and Chinese influence in our politics. I'm asking you, as we approach the local elections tomorrow, has Zach Polansky's Green Party bubble burst amid anti-Semitism claims and radical policies? Going to be talking to a Green Party supporter a little bit later in the show. You know, we do balance on this show, but I'm allowed to give my opinion. I mean, that's part of my job. And it seems to me that you know, this party is just like blowing up itself. By just simply the disinfectant of daylight, and actually being asked about their policies and told to actually square the circle of quite a lot of their radicalism. A lot of you are getting in touch. Mark says it's taken the media long enough to finally start to see through this clown and his party of nutjobs. Ricky says, I'm not for any party that has anti-Semites. It's quite straightforward. Brian says he's a moron and his policies are pie in the sky rubbish. It's an asylum of madness. Peter says the only time a politician tells the truth is when they're calling another politician a liar. They're all hypocrites. A lot of them are hypocrites. A lot of them are. Some are worse than others, though, I would say, Peter. John says Britain's most dangerous party. The Greens just want what's bad for the country. I mean, they do. I mean, anti-capitalism, definitely bad for the party. We're in the Corbynista territory, the Gaza party, effectively. Brendan says the people who voted for the Greens will vote for them no matter what because of their far-right bogeyman. And Tom says, this is Jeremy Corbyn all over again. What's strange is everyone is falling for it. Simon says, Jew haters have flocked to the Greens. The bubble will stay. Well, let's go to the phone line. 0344 499 1000. Number to call. Daniel's on the line from Epsom. Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Hey, Julia. Hey, Philip. How you doing?
Hey.
Oh, he's so happy. He's so chuffed you remembered to say hello to him as well. Don't encourage him, Daniel.
Well, I've been talking to like a local green activist near me, and she was saying how important the green belt is, and she's going to do everything she can to save the green belt and this section of the green belt. And I just said to her, yeah, but aren't you also in favour of open borders? and she was kind of like wriggling a bit, and I said, well, they're not. You can't have one without the other. If you want to keep the green belt, but then you also want to import, God knows, 20 million people.
Well, exactly. I mean, and they do have genuinely an open border policy. No one will be deported. Anyone who can get here and would get a house. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was just trying to get her to see reason there, and she literally couldn't do it. The moment you put them under any form of scrutiny, they just crumble. It's the same that they're not going to do anything.
So no, but did she say no? It won't mean that. It won't mean the damage to the green belt, or did she just sort of just refuse to discuss it? What was her response?
Yeah, so it was almost as if they weren't mutually exclusive when they definitely are. Like if you're going to need to build, I don't know, 20 million more homes, where are they all going to go? You can guarantee there's not enough brownfield sites, so it's just a misnomer.
Bearing in mind, though, of course, a lot of the green belt is actually brownfield sites. They've just called it the green belt stupidly. But that's the thing, they don't think it through, and that's the pain. Again, even things like the wealth tax. Brilliant, let's get the wealthy to pay. This idea they're not already paying tax. They already pay a heck of a lot of tax. They're funding everybody else. 1% of the population of this country is paying 30% of the income tax. They're paying tax. But if you make it go any higher, they leave the country. We know this because that's what's happened everywhere it's done.
Yeah, no, of course, but we're not to blame, but successive governments are to blame, because when you break the social contract, and when you get married and you have children and you have your own home, you move to the right. Okay, if you're 37 and you live with your mum and dad and you work in Halfords, and you've got no prospects of any of those things, then you lean towards these crazy parties. What we should have done is helped our kids along over the last 30, 40 years, and 100%. They would have naturally moved to the right. And instead, we've got a bunch of people, no chance of getting their own home, no kids, no marriage, and you wonder why they're voting for crazies like Bad Teeth Polanski. That's not even his name. And I just really hope, if I could make a wish and it was to come true today, I would just hope that somewhere out there, Nigel Farage, Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, I hope they could all have dinner somewhere and all align. And I think we need to get this country back on track.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think what we are going to need, though, is the Tories in reform to form a coalition, whether it's after an election, before, because otherwise we are looking at the current man, unless that bubble bursts properly, we are looking at a Labour, Green and Lib Dem coalition.
See, I don't think we've got another 5 years in us under like a socialist government. I mean, I think this particular government at the moment are diametrically opposed to the wills and wishes of the British majority. Everything that we hold dear, law and order, immigration,
border, just simply borders, borders.
Yeah, don't give away sovereign territory. They're sort of diametrically opposed to everything that we think.
Yeah. But also growth. I mean, again, that steely-eyed focus on growth. I haven't seen much of that.
There's not. Well, I can tell you firsthand because I've got my own small business, and what they've done to the economy has really affected business. People have got less money in their pockets, and people like me, now the millionaires have all gone. I'm next on the rung, and I'm feeling it at the moment, and I can't wait for these guys to go and just get a sensible government. But I know I'll be voting reform, and most of my family and friends will as well. All right. And I'm sitting here with my fingers crossed, Julia.
Okay, we shall see. Daniel, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Love to hear all different alternative points of view. Get in touch. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, going to be talking to Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's get straight to my next guest, Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. A very good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia. How's it going?
Very well. Lots to talk about at home and abroad. I want to ask you, though, our first question we're asking our audience today is, has Zach Polanski's Green Party bubble burst amid not just the anti-Semitism claims, but also actually some light being shed on some of their rather unusual and radical policies? What do you think? Is that happening, and would you welcome it?
Well, I would definitely welcome it, and I hope it's happening, but it's hard to tell at the moment. And what's scaring me right now is if there are significant numbers of people in this country willing to vote for a party, even with everything we know, even with all their crazy policies, the fact that Zach Polanski seems to be, not particularly familiar with the truth, and also, not to mention the anti-Semitism. This is a party that had candidates that referred to Jews as cockroaches, that said Jews are instructed by the Bible to kill children, that said that the Jews made up 7th of October just for financial gain. I mean, it is extraordinary, the rancid levels of Nazi-level anti-Semitism in this party. So I'm actually quite worried. If they do quite well, I'm going to think to myself, who's living on my streets? Who's living in my city? Who's voting for a party like this?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It is fascinating how long Zach Polanski was able to be, a party leader without getting any proper scrutiny. And again, he treated as if he's, frankly, a little friendly little Labrador dog bouncing on the laps of some of the interviewers. Now he's actually getting proper scrutiny. He's not doing too well. He was on Radio 4 this morning. Despite that, there was no pushback from Nick Robinson on the fact that he claimed quite incorrectly on both counts there was an ongoing genocide in Gaza. I assume he thinks Hamas is committing genocide in Gaza at the current time. But there's no pushback on that. Maybe that's BBC policy, isn't it? Just pretend there's a genocide that doesn't actually exist because they don't do facts anymore. But actually getting some pushback on his claims that he worked as a spokesman for the British Red Cross, which he didn't. I mean, I've never accidentally claimed to have had a job I never had, claimed to have been a member of the National Council for Hypnotherapists when he wasn't. Of course, this on top of when he worked as a hypnotherapist, claiming that he could make a woman's breasts larger simply by, hypnotising her. I mean, the litany of things that he has claimed, which simply are not true, is getting rather worrying. And then also his absolute insistence that, there isn't an anti-Semitism problem in his party. It's about the fact his own party is currently investigating 30 council candidates. Let's not name any candidates or any constituencies, but 30 council candidates for some of the most outrageous anti-Semitic tropes and slurs, calling Jews rats, vermin, celebrating the October the 7th massacre when it was long after it was well known what had happened on that day. I mean, it's only in the last, say, 2 weeks that there's actually been proper scrutiny of him.
And you know what? All his supporters are saying, oh, my God, the media is out to get him. The billionaires want to bring him down. I'm sorry, guys, this is called democracy. We hold people to account, especially people who want to hold office of some sort. He's been held to account. As you say, it was a long time coming, but finally the media are asking questions about this, I would say, a snake oil salesman, the kind of dodgiest showman in British politics who says things about himself that don't seem to have been true about the Red Cross and the Hypnotherapy Council, but also leads a party which is just rife with bigotry. The Green Party and their lefty supporters for years have been saying that the real dodgy fascist party in Britain is Reform, sections of the Tory party. We now know that the Greens are the true nasty party of 21st century British politics. This is a party with a lot of racists in it, with some crazy policies, with bigots seemingly everywhere. There are huge question marks over this party, and I really hope it does badly in the polls as a consequence of being held to account.
I mean, some of the timing for them has not been good on that front. And again, it does appear that his own personal ratings absolutely plummeted, something like by 14 points or something, over his criticism of the Metropolitan Police officers who were absolute heroes in tackling the suspected knife man in Golders Green last week, and yet kicking him in the head. And as we've heard from Philip Ingram, who's an expert in such things, if you think someone's got a explosive belt on and they're an Islamist terrorist, that's exactly what you should do. And again, if the armed response unit had been there, he'd already have been shot in the head, and quite rightly.
How out of touch do you have to be with ordinary Brits to complain about the fact that a man with a knife who had allegedly just stabbed 2 Jewish people was forcefully disarmed? As you say, those police behaved heroically. In fact, I found it very inspiring that there are still young coppers who are willing to risk their own safety to disarm a dangerous person and to protect ordinary citizens. That was really heartening to see.
And the Community Security Trust guys who were absolute heroes. I mean, they don't even have the tasers.
Absolutely. But, you know, the other thing we got to talk about in relation to all of this, it's unquestionable now that politics, the kind of politics being promoted by the Greens and the Palestine lobby and the left more broadly, it seems to me unquestionable that it is endangering Jews in this country. Because if you march through our streets every other weekend calling the Jewish state a Nazi state and showing the Star of David mixed up with a swastika and saying that everyone who supports Israel is a genocidal freak, which, by the way, includes most British Jews who identify as Zionists, then you are hanging a target sign around the necks of Britain's Jews. And that is just unquestionable now. We've got to really tone down this rabid anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism.
And we're often told, well, you know, anti-Semitism and these horrible things happen as a result of horrible things done by the Israeli government. The evidence is very clear, actually. The spikes in anti-Semitic attacks, whether it's in Britain, whether it's in France or Germany, whether it's in Australia, those spikes happen completely irrelevant to anything the Israeli government has done or not done. They happen after other anti-Semitic attacks. So the more anti-Semitic attacks there are, so whether it's Bondi Beach, whether it's October the 7th, whether it's the Heaton Park synagogue attack where 2 men died in Manchester last year, it is after those events that more anti-Semitic attacks are prompted. So let's stop that nonsense that these are people who care about babies in Gaza. That's a load of claptrap. They just want to hurt Jews. They should be a bit more honest about it, say the quiet bit aloud. You said, it's interesting, you talked about Zach Blansky as a snake oil salesman. I think of him more as a useful idiot. I don't think he's clever enough to be a snake oil salesman.
You could be right there, actually. He is a bit dim. Are we allowed to say that? He's not the brightest spark.
Pretty sure.
He's in the box. He might be a bit too dim to be a snake oil salesman. I think he's a bit of an opportunist. I mean, this is a man who was a Lib Dem 5 minutes ago and who wanted to be an actor at one point, and as you reminded us, thought he could grow women's breasts through hypnosis.
Worked for me, Brendan. It worked for me.
He's floated through so many crazy policies and crazy acts and different professions. He looks like someone who loves the stage and loves the sound of his own voice. And the problem for us is that the rest of us don't really like the sound of his voice. So we're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone else who perhaps has been exposed for what he really is, and again, did not get the proper scrutiny before he got the top job, and that is the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. We were told only a couple of months ago by Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour Party leader, that Keir Starmer had to go. Now we've got the Baroness Morgan, of the Welsh Labour leader, basically saying Keir Starmer's name comes up on the doorsteps and he could cost the Welsh Labour Party the election tomorrow in the Senate and lose them control of the Senate. Plaid Cymru very much looking like they could take it by just over the line. Reform doing very well there as well. Do you think that's also the issue? There simply wasn't enough proper scrutiny of both Keir Starmer and indeed you could say his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, given what's been exposed about her CV and the large holes in it and the big blatant open lies in it that would have got anyone else, the rest of us would have all been sacked for those sort of lies in our CV from any job we had, but she's still in the job. Do you think that actually Keir Starmer, having been in the job only 22 months, it may feel like 22 years, but it is only 22 months, that actually he has also been exposed? And this is something that we really need to do. We need to have proper scrutiny, not just of politicians' policies, but of politicians themselves before they get the top job.
Absolutely right. And it seemed to me that so much of the liberal media in particular just went on holiday when Starmer became PM. They thought, oh, great, our work is done. We've got someone like us in Downing Street so we can relax. We don't have to hold his feet to the fire. And they gave him such an easy ride. And in fact, so many of the columnists, the kind of big-hitting columnists and reporters, gushed over him. They were like, oh, the adults are back in the room. Common sense has returned to British politics. Now we know that actually this has been an incredibly chaotic government. It's lurched from one scandal to another. It doesn't know what it's doing with the country. But, I think that the prospect this week that Labour will do very badly in Wales and potentially very badly in London. In Wales, it might lose out to Reform and to the Welsh Nationalists. In London, it might lose out to the Greens. This is a potential death blow for the Labour Party because the Welsh heartlands is where the Labour Party was strong for a century, from the pit to the pulpit. It was all about Labour. And of course, in London, amongst the middle classes and the public sector workers, Labour was the party. They might even lose there. So they've lost the red wall up north and in the Midlands. They could lose Wales. They could lose London. This is a party in absolute freefall, and it doesn't have much of a future.
No, well, we shall see what happens there. Do you think we are going to see a Labour Party leadership challenge, and how soon? And How do you rate the chances of, Andy Burnham getting back in, Angela Rayner's chances, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband being our next Chancellor Whittle? What are the runners and riders doing in your view?
I mean, what a motley crew. There's
It's not encouraging, is it?
No statesmen, no stateswomen, none of those kind of great leaders of old, which I don't just mean the obvious ones like Churchill and Thatcher. I mean great Labour leaders of old,
Where's your Healy's? And
even someone like Tony Benn, and people will have had a million disagreements with him, but he was a great orator, he was a great leader, he had passion and vision. That's why lots of people lined up behind him. They wanted him to be leader of the Labour Party at one point. Barbara Castle, Peter Shaw, Michael Foot even. Everyone made fun of Michael Foot in the 80s, but looking back now, he's brilliant.
He's a giant.
Yeah, and so there's no solid leaders, and what a sign of the times that is. And everyone says Andy Burnham, the king of the North, will sweep in and fix Labour. I'm not convinced by that either. It does seem that he's the most sensible of all the options, but I'm not convinced he's got the magic touch and he can rescue this party from the doldrums.
Well, it's interesting. He's the most sensible one, we say, and yet he did also say a few months ago, it doesn't matter what the bond markets think. I'm paraphrasing, but I have a horrible feeling the bond markets might be the ones who decide that. Brendan O'Neill, so much to talk about. I mean, we haven't even got ready to reform the Tories. Time is against us, but always good to get your thoughts on all of these things. Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill there. Quick response from you, Philip?
Well, Brendan's talking a lot of sense. I think your political system at the moment is in such turmoil that it's going to be very difficult to predict what's going to happen. It's going to be very difficult to work out what path we're going to go down. Yep. Keir Starmer is just going to get worse and worse and worse. Yeah,
it's just fascinating. I mean, again, he's the only person who doesn't realise he's finished. 10:48 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking to historian Dr. Philip Kisley about the absolutely outrageous new stat that 2/3 of Gen Z adults, so those ones in their late teens and 20s, don't actually know what VE Day actually marks. How terrifying is that? That's up next. This is Talk.
Neil Kinnock felt the Labour Party. He changed the Labour Party. He thought he might be the Prime Minister in 92. We didn't win. But he had that feeling for the Labour Party. That doesn't exist with Keir Starmer, I'm afraid. Look, I often say, Jeremy, the Labour Party is the nearest thing I've got to a religion. But if the Labour Party was the Church of England, Keir Starmer would be the chief executive of it.
Well, he's the God. It means he's your God right now.
Well, he's not the spiritual leader, is my point.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:52 is the time. Let's talk right now about, events coming up very, very soon in terms of marking, Victory in Europe Day. And extraordinary revelation that 2/3 of Gen Z adults, so those are those who are in their late teens and 20s, are completely and utterly unaware of what VE Day marks, which is pretty simple. VE, Victory Europe. It's the end of the Second World War. How the hell do they not know that? And how the hell are we going to move forward as a country with so many young people totally ignorant of our history? Let's talk about this with Dr. Philip Kisley. He's a historian and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Philip, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Julia. It's really great to see you.
Well, I wish it was under nicer circumstances. We've got commemorations on Friday. The survey's been carried out by the Royal British Veterans Enterprise. They found that just 63% of non-Gen Z adults know what the occasion marks. Now, I'm sorry, that is absolutely terrifying. 36% of Gen Z adults, and the public just generally don't know this basic stuff. I mean, this is surely seared into every British person's memory from the day they go to school, isn't it?
Well, you would think so, and you would certainly like to think so. But I think what's been happening over the last 30 years, particularly in education, but also in society as well, and I'll probably come to that in a minute, is there's been a process of erasing, hasn't there? There is an erasure of our collective memory, and that's a very, very dangerous thing to happen, because if you don't know about your heritage, if you don't know about your history, and you are not free to celebrate that, you are not free to celebrate who you are, and you do not know who you are. And a society that doesn't understand what it is a very unstable society. And we see that playing out in lots and lots of different ways. Now, I think there are a couple of issues here. First of all, quite obviously, is education, as I say. You know, children are indoctrinated into celebrating every other single culture but our own.
Everything,
Yeah, and as we see through the curriculum, certainly through decolonizing the curriculum, there is a kind of rewriting, an obtuse rewriting of history that just presents Britishness and Englishness as the villain, and every other race and culture is heroic. And within this country, the only way children can look at history is to view marginalized groups as somehow heroic, fighting back against the establishment. Now, history isn't about heroes and villains. History is messy, it's complicated, but people need some kind of national myth. They need something to pin their hopes for the future on, because they can look back at the past and say that.
But it's, you say
and the
national
Second
myth,
World War.
but
Sorry,
it's not a myth.
Yeah, it's not a myth. No, but it's part of our identity. It's our story. It's our broader story, and it's something to celebrate because it latches on, as I keep saying, to who we are. Now, that it's very important, isn't it, that first of all, they tried to demonize Winston Churchill, the educators and the establishment, by making him a ray. He was born in 1875, for God's sake, Julia.
He had perfectly normal views for the time.
Yeah. But they couldn't demonize him in that way, so they've erased him. They've disappeared him, and that's what they're doing with our history. And that's why kids today, and adults as well, Julia, do not know what VE Day is.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary. I've been listening to a podcast about Queen Elizabeth I, just sort of casual listening, and I'm always amazed, having gone to a comp school, how little history, for somebody who's got a history A level, I know about particularly our own country, because so little of it is taught. We're not taught sort of through the ages, the kings and queens and things and the key things. But I certainly covered, between the wars, crucial issue, deciding, what was happening in Europe. But it seems to me this is like just such basic stuff. This is sort of, this is in the top 10 facts that anyone who's gone to school in Britain should know. And it makes you wonder, what else are our kids not being taught? I mean, 2 + 2 = 4?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole different set of values. I think that what we understood when we were children, our generation, of what was correct what was true, in fact, you know, what was objectively true has constantly been eroded away. Now, there's a whole different set of values which are just abstract and fundamentally untrue. So now children will be indoctrinated into thinking that men are women and women are men. You know, they will be indoctrinated into thinking that the British Empire is the last word in evil, all of those things. So I think there's something very profound happening here, and it's almost like a kind of revolution, isn't it? People think that revolutions happen when there's a red flag raised above the post office and people march in the street. No, there's been a long march through the institutions over the last 30 or 40, 50 years, you could say, which has been an attack on national identity in particular, and we are seeing that played out now through absolute brute ignorance in our young people.
Well, again, people being ashamed of or intimidated by their flag of their country. I think a lot of this comes down to moral relativism. The idea, again, that, well, you know, there was good and bad on both sides in the Second World War. No. This was an absolute battle between good and evil, and we were on the good side. And you know, you're welcome, world. I mean, it is extraordinary that this can be something that can be turned into, you know, a battle between good and evil, between, you know, those, and it's a working class campaign in Britain who wanted to, you know, abolish slavery, and Britain did that. It's the first empire to ever do that, and somehow we're on the evil side. I mean, I'm genuinely terrified about young people. No wonder they have such sort of slanted views on so many things when they are so ignorant of such basic things as you know, what our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers did to enable them to, you know, stupidly at 16 get the vote.
Yeah, but I think there's something else happening as well, isn't it? It's the imposition, we never voted it, it's the imposition of mass immigration over the last 30 or 40 years as well. So if these young kids have both parents, and don't get me wrong here, I'm not against immigration, one of my parents was an immigrant, but if both of these kids if these kids have both parents who are immigrants, then they are going to be so far removed from the history and heritage and identity of this culture. And, you know, we know full well that was one of the reasons why mass immigration was imposed on us 30 or 40 years ago, because the left wanted to dismantle the identity.
Exactly. Time is against us. The music's about to start, but always so great to get your views. Such clear thinking. Dr. Philip Kisley, historian and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Response to time from Philip Ingram. What do you make of all of that?
There's a direct impact on people's decision-making today. If they don't understand the realities of conflict, the realities of war, you can't then support extra money being put into defence because you don't understand the implications for it not being put in there.
Because war is bad. No, war's bad. If you just think war's bad and you want to wear your white poppy, and you won't understand that sometimes war is necessary thing to defeat evil.
But actually the impact it has on the population as well, and therefore the importance of stopping war by investing in defence.
Absolutely. Seriously, our teachers have a lot to answer for. Also, parents, if you're not teaching your kids this stuff, you are failing. It's top of the hour in a few moments, lots more to come. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for joining me. We're fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. If you miss anything from the show, if you missed the first hour, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're discussing more about Zach Polanski and, well, just basically being exposed. Not just the anti-Semitism in his party, which is on a grand scale, but also false claims about his own past and his previous jobs. We're also going to be talking about Project Freedom. That's Donald Trump's operation to guide vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, because he says great progress has been made towards a deal with Iran. Well, Pakistani sources are telling reporters that actually there is some progress towards some sort of a deal. So we'll talk about that. Plus, airlines have cancelled 13,000 flights scheduled to run this month in an effort to conserve increasingly scarce jet fuel. Will this mean some of our summer holiday plans are curtailed? And should we ban the early morning pint in the airport? Why is Michael O'Leary so upset that he's got drunk passengers getting on Ryanair planes when his own staff are legally not allowed to let drunk passengers on planes? I've got no problem with drunkards not being allowed on planes, but it's kind of up to the airlines to do that. We'll talk about all of that and plenty more. Besides, delighted to say, joining me today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. I'm sure you've got on a plane or two with a drink inside you, have you not, in the ears?
Well,
that's a yes.
If there wasn't inside then, maybe on the aircraft. And actually, I was on a trip, a military trip with a very well-known airline, and we had several hundred people from our course on it, and we drank the plane dry.
Oh, well played,
completely.
Well played. I hope you didn't cause any trouble.
No, none whatsoever.
Just checking. That's the key thing.
There was lots of dancing in the aisles, and the staff were dancing with us as well and having a great time.
Always bodes well. I don't think you're going to be the most responsible person to talk about on that topic, but you can talk to Michael O'Leary. Lots to talk about, though. Local elections tomorrow. And the question I'm asking our audience today, I'll put it to you again with all the details to get in touch, but has Zach Polanski's Green Party bubble burst amid anti-Semitism claims and radical policies? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls to charge the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Philip Ingram, we'll spend a little less time on the Greens in this section because we've got a Green Party guest coming up in this hour. But, I mean, do you think that actually their bubble has burst? And these claims about Zach Polanski's job. He wasn't a spokesman for the British Red Cross, as he claimed when he was crowdfunding to fund his deputy leader of a campaign before he became leader. He wasn't a full member of the National Council for Hypnotherapy when he claimed to be able to hypnotise a woman into having bigger breasts. I mean, I was liking him on social media yesterday. He was an actor previously. Maybe an actor still now, you could argue, that, you know, he's competing with Mr. Ben. Are you old
Yes,
enough to remember Mr. Ben,
yes.
everybody? You're old enough. People kept telling me, don't ruin Mr. Ben for me. Cartoon when I was a child, this guy who just wanders into a costume shop and then he goes to the changing room and he comes out and he's basically, he's a knight at the round table, or he's an astronaut, or he's a deep sea diver, or whatever he is. But he's had more, he changes into a costume every 5 minutes.
He does, but you are ruining Mr. Ben by comparing him to Polanski. But
sorry.
you know, the Greens you've rocketed out of nowhere, and when you're doing that, there's no substance behind them whatsoever. So they're rapidly just shoving people into different places, and therefore, as soon as you put more scrutiny, you put them under that lens, you're going to find lots of things, and they're going to fall apart. And people are going, well, I have to have a protest vote somewhere. The Greens are brilliant. We love everything green. Oh, well, I haven't talked about anything green.
Isn't the view that we want a protest vote so lots of people move on the right going to reform, and on the left saying, well, but the Green Party are a nice party because they care about, trees, and therefore they're a nice party to have a protest vote.
Have you ever heard them talk about trees? Or
I tell you, I have not heard a single green policy mentioned.
There isn't any. And I heard a debate yesterday where he was assuming that everyone would automatically think that because of the Green Party, all of their policies were green anyway. So he was focusing on other things that were important. He's making it up. And as he gets put under more and more scrutiny, people begin to realise that actually he's just making it up.
I mean, again, they keep saying they're under attack. The Green Party themselves
are attacking themselves.
They are investigating 30 different candidates. Yes, I know there are many hundreds who are standing. However, 30 candidates have been probed over anti-Semitism. That's just the public stuff. That's the stuff they proudly put on social media, calling Jews rats or vermin, claiming that the attacks on the ambulances in Golders Green was a false flag, claiming that the Jews were behind October the 7th attacks, 9/11 attacks as well. I mean, you name it, everything. Saying that ramming a synagogue full of children wasn't anti-Semitism, it was revenge. Calling the Hamas terrorists resistance is freedom, slogan. I mean, there's no doubt at all they have an anti-Semitism problem, but this shouldn't be a surprise when this is a party that's supposed to be tree huggers and all right on. They embrace trans activism, so everyone's got green hair and blue hair and thinks they're non-binary and pansexual.
And they want Class A drugs to be free
Class
for
A
everyone.
Drugs, not just cannabis. Not just cannabis to be legalised, but heroin to be legalised. Not free, but legalised for everybody. But also what I think want to ban smoking. So I mean, it's a complicated world here for them, Philip. But when they have allied with the blatant anti-Semitists in the pro-Gaza movement, the Islamist pro-Gaza movement, which is not pro-Gaza. They couldn't give two hoots about babies in Gaza. What they care about is destroying Israel and killing Jews. That is what the Islamist movement is about. That's what Iran's about. That's what Hamas is about. Hezbollah is about. And they signed up to all of that. I mean, we always laugh about, queers for Palestine and things like that. Like, good luck. Why don't you go to where you think Palestine is and see how that works out.
With a rainbow flag and see how long you survive.
But do you think this is always going to happen once we had the disinfectant of sunlight? Because for as long time, Zach Polanski was treated, as I say, like a Labrador, and like, oh, little cuddly Zach, oh, the nice Green Party, and the soft-soaping interviews he's been having over radical policies which would bankrupt the country. Forget the anti-Semitism, but would bankrupt the country overnight. And he's been given soft soap interviews. Is it because actually large parts of our media, they kind of sympathise?
Well, yeah, of course it is. And we've seen them sympathise with the pro-Palestinian protests and with everything else that's going on. So he has been given an easy ride of it. But now that, as you say, the sunlight is being shone upon his being and everything that there is underneath it, he's being found out, and people are beginning to realise. So he will keep a level of support because people will go, oh, well, he's better than the current lot, so I'm going to keep my vote there no matter what. But he's not going to get that massive rocket.
Well, I mean, we're seeing, some of the policy, they always go on about this wealth tax, 1% on assets above 10 million. Look, I'm pretty much, I think I might know someone or two who might listen to my show who might have assets worth 10 million. And well played to you, sirs and ma'ams. But a wealth tax of 1% on assets over 10 million quid. People who've got assets over 10 million quid, remarkably mobile, they're gone.
Correct.
They're gone. Net zero and zero carbon electricity by 2030, 70% from wind. We are sitting in the dark and the cold for the winter, full stop. £15 an hour minimum wage for all ages. Well, that would be great, except the fact no one's going to hire an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old to do a job.
And there'll be no businesses left.
When they're going to... They can't afford... Business is already going under with having to pay the minimum wage as it is currently, and it's, 10, 11 quid an hour. And paying for the national insurance on that. A holiday tax on frequent flyers because, my God, they don't want us to have fun. A 55 mile per hour speed limit on the motorway. We just won't get anywhere. A 4-day working week, still paid for a 5-day working week. Don't have a go at me. I took the pay cut to work a 4-day week, so don't give me that nonsense. But again, we're just going to pay everybody 100% of their pay for doing 80% of their work. Well, frankly, I think in the civil service we already do that.
Well, yes.
I'm not sure it's working out well. A 10-to-1 pay ratio between the highest and lowest paid employee, because that would be brilliant. Because if you run Sainsbury's, you can't be paid more than 10 times more than the bloke working on the shelves or the woman on the till. Seriously. The company, those people are not going to get pay rises. Those companies won't function. People will leave the country who are good people. Leaving NATO, dismantling Trident. So, brilliant. No defence whatsoever. And spending more on foreign aid than defence. Oh, yeah, and the small point of completely and utterly open borders and giving everybody who arrives here a house and no deportation. Oh yeah, and legalising heroin, decriminalising drug possession, and also legalising prostitution as well. I mean, it's going to be a brave new world. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, number 10, there'll be some good parties there, and some questionable individuals invited, giving the entertainment for all of the guests.
There absolutely will, won't there? But have a look. There's no doubt at all the people who are most worried about the Green Party doing well, I'd say, as our Jewish population of the country. But then the Labour Party, Keir Starmer. Is facing really one of the biggest tests he's got in terms of his future. The idea is, being generally, he's going to be ousted. There's going to be a leadership campaign soon after these elections. They're not actually starting counting votes in most of the local elections, and indeed in Scotland and Wales, until 9 o'clock on the Friday morning. Normally I would do an post-election show because we'd have all the results, but we won't have them by the time I'm on air, realistically. But we know they're going to be bad. I mean, Lord Hayward, a pollster and Tory peer who's been very accurate and never gives sort of predictions far out. He has said in the last few days we're looking at Labour losing 1,850 seats. Yeah. That's way over even though some of the worst case scenarios people have predicted. Tories losing 500, about a third of their seats. This could be absolutely apocalyptic for Labour, losing Wales, no longer the second and possible contenders against the SNP in Scotland, losing a load of seats in London, one of their strongholds, and of course the Red Wall. They've already lost a lot of those already. This could be the end for Starmer. Do you think he will face an almost immediate leadership challenge or not?
Well, I think for leadership challenge possibly, but I think what will happen after these elections is that a lot of the Labour MPs that have come in, who are first-time Labour MPs, will suddenly go, oh my goodness, looking at what's happening in my constituency, that means I'm in for one go. I'm already 2 years in to 4 years. Therefore, if I'm going to make my mark and have the potential to stay, I'm either going to jump ship, so some may jump ship, or I'm going to just do what I want to do for my local constituents. To hell with what the Central Labour Party is saying. So we're going to see rebellion after rebellion after rebellion in the backbenches. So it's going to beat the government apart, and we're going to have.
And they're already facing rebellions.
Exactly. We're going to have the next 2 years of our politics shaking itself to pieces.
Well, there'll also be an element of a scorched earth policy, which is why if we're only going to be in until 2029. Although I still think they're delusional enough to think. Bearing in mind, you've got to remember the left largely live in complete and utter bubbles in a way that people on the right don't, simply because we have a media that is
people
so on the left.
Pay for people on the left.
And we've got, exactly. Is there an element where they are going to go, well, we may as well go to the left, and you'll get Ed Miliband in, we'll go full on lunatic net zero, we'll go full on wealth tax here, and basically shore up all of their left-wing policies?
I think some will do that, but I think the vast majority that have come in tend to be centre-left, or arguably some of them I know are centre-right. And
a lot of new MPs are not. They're the ones who think you shouldn't even cut welfare spending increase by 5 billion. That's how lefty and mad they are.
There's that big chunk that are in there, and they're the Corbynista side of things, but there's also a big chunk that's in there who are much more centrally focused, and they're going to be going, I want to achieve something so that I've got a bit of a legacy that my local community can say, I did good for you, Gov.
Oh, they don't care about that.
Oh, some of them do.
Some of them might do. I don't know. I mean, they may not be able to do very much, have much choice, really. The UK borrowing costs are soaring over this leadership. Yes. Extraordinary thing. The markets are saying, the bond markets are saying, we think it's a really bad thing you might get rid of Rachel Reeves. Not because they think Rachel Reeves is any good, because we currently have much higher prices to borrow for the government. But they think that, it could only get worse, because all the candidates seem to be suggesting Ed Miliband as their chancellor, which is properly mad.
Oh, completely mad. But actually, whether the markets are looking at a potential change of government, or whether the markets are actually going, let's look at the current policies and how those policies could be taken forward, no matter who's in there, they're going, the current policies just aren't working. We've got the worst borrowing rates, and predicted to get even more worse than
and on every single metric, whether it's inflation, whether it's interest, whether it's the price of oil, price of gas, shortages of jet fuel, you name it, we are all of the, and again, it's not me saying it, it's the international organisations who do predictions and are all saying we are being hit worse by everything happening in the Iran conflict because of the existing policies of this government and past governments.
Yeah, it's a confidence indicator on government policies. And if we look at what happened under Liz Truss, it wasn't because of who could take over from Liz Truss, it was because because of what they perceived Liz Truss was doing at that time. And this is where it's coming in. And actually Rachel Reeves's borrowing rates are worse than the worst case that Liz Truss had.
Yeah, I mean, by a long way. By a long way. Yeah, exactly. It's quite extraordinary. And yet she's still there. I love the fact that there's lots of talk in the papers the last couple of weeks that Keir Starmer is going to ditch Rachel Reeves in a reshuffle. I mean, she has got no constituency of Labour MPs who massively support her on the benches, so that he could do that. You know, they'll be delighted. Oh, blame her for all the rises so far in taxes. But he thinks that that's going to save him. I mean, they don't blame Rachel Reeves, mate. They blame you.
100%. And what we'll see is after the disaster for Labour that there will be in the local government elections, Keir Starmer will very quickly come out and go, I need a major reshuffle of
and a reset.
To try, and another reset to try and protect his own position. Rachel Reeves will go. I hope Lord Hermer will go. And we have to see who he brings in.
But again, it's not really a personnel issue.
No.
It's a policy issue. Because people wouldn't mind having a very boring and bland Prime Minister if he got anything. I mean, anything right. The only thing he thinks he's got right, because these things get pushed into my timeline. He seems putting out, Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage were supporting Trump on this war in Iran. I made the right call. He had a tiny little blip in the polls that for once people thought he'd vaguely accidentally stumbled on the right policy. I still think he didn't. But he's still thinking that's the one thing he did right.
Yeah, but he lied to us. The support of the Americans did not change at all. Yeah. And all he did was he destroyed a relationship that we had to act as a conscience for Donald Trump. So actually, he put us backwards.
Very good point. And let's talk about Iran, because basically yesterday we had two press conferences by Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for War, and we had the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, both giving press conferences about this Operation Freedom. God, I love these names of these operations in the Strait of Hormuz for the American warships to escort some 2,000 ships, including 100 plus 200 tankers, out of the Strait of Hormuz to freedom. After that, I think one ship got out. Threats from the Iranians, drones shot down, and the like. And then just after these press conferences, within hours, Donald Trump says, "Oh, we're no longer doing that anymore. It's over." And he was saying that there were some talks looking quite promising with the Iranian leadership via Pakistan. Sources in Pakistan have now said that is the case, and they are maybe close to a deal. But the question is what any deal is. But the main thing is, I mean, you can't trust any US policy, anything that comes out of the White House longer than the next Truth Social post or interview from Donald Trump or phone call to a journalist late at night.
You can't, but we have to sort of sit back and let negotiations go on behind closed doors. It's not going to come out in public. And if Donald Trump had started to escort the tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, Iran would have wanted to retaliate and to try and sink some of them and sink US warships. That would have resulted in the United States having to carry out a massive military action into Iran again. An overwhelming action, probably bigger than he's done beforehand. Yeah. And therefore, we'd have seen immediate escalation. If there are...
deaths of American servicemen and women.
Yes, and deaths of Iranian civilians as well. So, and then Iran would have responded by attacking across the Middle East even more, so it would have blown it up. So if there's the potential for talks to try and deal with this on the back of the threat that Donald Trump has put in to do that, you have to give that an opportunity. You have to give it a chance.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best hope, is that we do want this then. However, we also want Iran never to have access to a nuclear weapon.
100%.
Realistically, whatever the Iranian leadership say they are going to do, there's no reason to believe a single word they say.
No. And the one thing that we can guarantee that they're doing is they will play for time, because they don't care if they keep the Strait of Hormuz closed for 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years. And in fact,
even if their blockade is blockaded by the Americans and therefore cost them, $500 million a day?
They don't care.
But that does impact that. Well, they don't care about the plight of the Iranian people. Yeah. But that does impact the Iranian leadership, does it not? Or are they completely insulated from this?
Well, they're as insulated as they can be from this, because they've got smuggling routes to get things out. They know that
they're already taking tankers over land borders.
They know it's going to hurt the West much more, and they know that from a political perspective, they haven't got political threats against them. Whereas in the West, Donald Trump's going to be gone in a couple of years. Keir Starmer is going to be gone in a couple of years. Macron is gone. The only area that they will be focusing on are the Middle Eastern leaders who are in monarchies, and they don't have the same sort of electoral processes and everything else. So that will concern them. But the West, they don't care. They'll play the game out long.
But this is the issue. This is the problem we've got now. Whether we are dealing with, whether it's China, or whether it's dealing with Russia, whether it's dealing with the Iranian lunatics, or indeed Gulf dictators of any sort, if they were a threat to us, is that in a democracy in the West, with the advent of certainly of social media propaganda as well, we can't fight any wars at all because the public won't put up with any cost of living rise, and people are already growing weary of the Ukraine war. I mean, the amount of the Russian bots on that were outrageous. I mean, I'm really sorry petrol's gone up and heating costs have gone up, but I'm sorry, you just think because of that we should just let Russia march into any country they want, and which country do you think will be next? I find it extraordinary. I mean, look, and I don't want our leaders to be just sort of sending our boys off to die, in muddy fields anywhere. Absolutely not. However, the threat of Iran is real. It is. Okay, whether it's imminent in 2 weeks, 2 months or 2 years, that's too sodding imminent for me.
Yes.
And it should be too imminent for anybody. They are a threat, not just to our ally in Israel. They're a threat to other Gulf states, also our allies. They are a threat, clearly, with the development of intercontinental ballistic missiles. There's a clue in the name that they are a threat to Europe as well. They are absolute lunatics who believe that if everything is blown up, they are just there with their 72 virgins and it's all fine. They don't care if their people die. They don't care if we die. They're not even that bothered, it would appear, if they die.
No, they don't care.
Those people cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon. So any deal that is done that means that Iran is still in a position where it has leaders who want to develop a nuclear weapon, not for defensive purposes, but for offensive purposes, surely can't be allowed.
It can't be allowed in the slightest. And the only way to properly defend our democracy is to have a military capability that is so strong that any of these dictatorships that are out there will suddenly go, no, I do not want to engage with
not just a capability, a willingness to use it. And a public that will understand that sometimes you have to have a bit of hardship to be safer in the long term.
That's what I mean about capability, because capability, military capability isn't something that's in isolation. You don't have a military there just to do military stuff. The military is there as an arm of diplomacy, and therefore it's an arm of our international politics, and it's used from that perspective. That's why we send HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales down into Southeast Asia to go around and fly the flag.
Okay.
It's diplomacy.
Okay, yeah. I mean, again, but war is an extension of diplomacy.
It's
not the alternative.
Correct.
Really great to have your perspective on all that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we've been talking about. 11:25 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Going to take your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk. if they actually stand by the policies they claim to believe in, surely they would welcome these people with open arms. They would probably lead marches to these camps to unlock the doors and open them freely into their local communities and indeed into their own spare rooms. Absolutely love this policy. It is politicking, it is a gimmick, absolutely. But it's basically calling the bluff of the open border zealots who, well, they talk a good game, but when it actually comes to being on their own doorstep, they don't like it quite so much, do they?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 11:27 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls and whatever you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Brian is in Northern Ireland. Brian, what do you want to say?
Another clown in the Houses of Parliament. Zach Balinski.
I was going to say, narrow it down.
It's bad enough that the circus hadn't already got Miliband, Starmer and Ed Davey. Now we have a green one. We're lucky here in Northern Ireland. We don't have to put up with any of those idiots. We have enough idiots of our own. But I can see a situation where he will join with the like of Corbyn and the Islamists in Parliament to try and make some sort of a block, you know, to promote themselves and get themselves.
Yeah, because you've got the Corbynists, you have the Your Party, you've got the sort of independent Gaza Party, and the Greens. That's quite a lot of them.
My view on the matter is that Great Britain are in for an awful shock. We had it for 40 years here in Northern Ireland. I served in uniform for 35 years, and people that I was locking up are now in government, thanks to Mr. Tony Blair, another clown. I'm at a loss as to what Great Britain are going to do, because unless we get a coalition of reform, restore and advance, you're in trouble.
I'm going to assure you that, I'm sorry, but Restore and Advance and all the others, the other little breakaway reform type parties, they're not going to be able to stand enough candidates, have the ground game. They're not going to be delivering the numbers on the day of an election. That's the reality.
Yeah, that is a reality.
It's going to be Reform and Tories if they're going to have to form a coalition.
Yeah, but I'm afraid that Britain are in for some of what we got in Northern Ireland, obviously from a different colour or a different direction.
Yeah, very interesting.
But this terrorism business, anti-Jewish business and all the rest of it is an absolute disgrace. In my earlier career, I worked for quite a few Jewish people, did work for them, and I found them hard-working, honest people.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but like... They'll be hard-working, honest Jews, the same with their hard-working, honest Christians and atheists and Muslims. And, I mean, that's the whole point. Let's not judge everybody by anything other than their own individual actions and words. Brian, I'm going to leave it there because I want to get another call in before I have to go to the bottom of the hour. Thank you so much for that. Interesting point to compare with what's been going on in Northern Ireland. David is in Gloucester. David, you want to talk about the fact that 2/3 of basically people under the age of 30 don't even know what VE Day is marking.
I know, it's absolutely, well, I don't know, it's incredible, disgraceful, that they don't realise that that's what our freedoms are all about, They're
all glued. What's fascinating, they're all glued to their phones. These phones have access to pretty much every bit of information the world has ever known. And they're choosing to play, some sort of computer game on it or post pictures of themselves, sort of, pursing their lips with a V sign. But they don't even know about Victory in Europe Day.
Yeah, but you see, they're not actually reading the news or anything. This is why, the Greens are popular. There was a lad in the village, and he's doing politics at uni, and we said to him one day, which party do you support? Oh, I think the Greens are great. And it's like, oh my God, and there was another lady, a friend of ours, and I was saying about, immigration, and she goes, oh, immigration's great. Oh, they're fantastic people. You don't know what you are going on about. And I thought, oh dear, I'm going to have to pull out of here.
Both of those are perfectly legitimate viewpoints, depending on what impacts you and what doesn't impact you.
Well, I'm lucky. We're lucky here down in the forest. We've got a lot of immigration in the forest. There's a lot of them about, but. you know, we're lucky. You know, I'm probably in one of those little villages that won't be affected directly, and I'll probably say, you know, financially, I won't be affected, but I still think about the country. You know, and my real point about this, though, Julia, was the fact that, you know, the fact that the VE Day, they don't know about VE Day, is the fact that the Starmer and co think it's okay to persecute our soldiers and our special forces. I mean, when the special forces are resigning rather than risking going in doing their job, you know, I mean, Philip will probably tell you, is it the 45th anniversary of the Iranian embassy today? Was that right? Something like that?
Philip's nodding,
you know, I mean, those blokes put their lives on the line to save us.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you know, and it's just crazy, you know. I mean, we're lucky, you know. I mean, we're not far from Hereford here, you know. I mean, what, crows fly, you know, 20 minutes away. But, I mean, blimmin' heck, you know, you should always support your forces.
Well, but again, it's not even a question of supporting the forces. It's like, if you just don't know the most basic history of your nation in the last 100 years, something's gone horribly wrong at school, something's gone horribly wrong at home, and it's horribly wrong in the media as well. Really appreciate that. We covered a lot of ground there, David. Thank you for that. Up next, you don't want to miss this, Dr. Ashok Kumar, a Green Party activist, is going to be on the show. Stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to my first guest in this section, Dr. Ashok Kumar. He's a Green Party activist. He's also Associate Professor at Birkbeck University. A very good morning to you, Ashok.
Morning, Julia.
We always start off friendly, don't we?
Yes.
Simple question. Has Zach Polanski's Green Party bubble burst over not just anti-Semitism, but also, crucially, and I'd like you to address this first, the fact that he's a liar?
Why do you say he's a liar?
Well, because he lied about being a member of the National Council of Hypnotherapy when he wasn't to his clients. He also lied when he claimed repeatedly that he was a spokesman for the British Red Cross, something they have been the ones to speak out and go, no, you weren't. He's now apologised for doing that and said that was not true. I mean, basically, he keeps claiming that he's doing things or has jobs which he hasn't actually had. That makes him a liar, doesn't it?
I mean, look, I think this is sort of the end of, election cycle, GOTV forms of attacks that I think, of course, my understanding is that he was, he'd organized a series of events and he had spoken at them and fundraisers for the Red Cross.
Doesn't mean he's a spokesman.
Of course not. Yeah, and
But
so
he said he lied.
Yeah, he said he was,
and he's not.
And that was the wrong term to describe what he was.
Was it the wrong term? If Nigel Farage did that, you'd say he was a liar. If Nigel Farage did that, I would also call him a liar.
I mean, if Nigel Farage said that, I would say it's not a big story. That's probably what I would say.
I don't think that is what you'd say.
I would. I'm pretty balanced on this.
Is the media attacking Zach Polanski for exposing him for things like telling a woman that he could make her breasts bigger through hypnotherapy, claiming to have had jobs that he didn't have, claiming to be a member of an organisation that he's not a member of? Is that an unfair political attack?
No, I think they're fair. I think they're fair to scrutinize people's record. Absolutely. Do I think they're big stories? No. I get the point about, okay, is this a pattern of behavior? I think in the long history of one's record, if they've said certain things that turns out to be, not wildly untrue, but, a bit untrue. Untrue. Yeah, let's say it. Untrue. I don't think that's an indication of them as a person or
same as the concerns people have about the cabinet minister who didn't know whether they were a solicitor or not. I'm pretty sure I would know if I was a solicitor or not. The chancellor who didn't know how long she worked at the Bank of England or indeed what job she did at Halifax Bank of Scotland. I mean, we're entitled to judge people if they say things that are blatantly, provably untrue.
Of course, I don't think it's a big story, but that's obviously because I think the real stories are, I wish Labour instead of, maybe it's the journalists as well, but I wish we could talk more about issues. But I don't think let's
do that. Let's talk about issues. Because one thing I think we can all agree is a big story is the fact that we are seeing a massive increase in physical and verbal attacks on Jews in this country. The stabbing of 2 Jewish men by an alleged suspect currently who's already been charged, believed to be an Islamist attack, has caused great concern. We've been big summits in Downing Street, and we're going to be fast-tracking hate crime prosecutions and the like. Now, there's no doubt at all there is a problem of anti-Semitism within the Green Party, because the Green Party itself is investigating no less than 30 candidates who have been publicly identified as having posted or said or written blatantly anti-Semitic things, calling Jews vermin, rats, celebrating the October 7th massacre, suggesting that Hamas are, resistance fighters. You are a Green Party activist. Let's talk about the issues. Is it an issue if you support a party and a party has as much support as the Green Party has garnered in recent months, which is basically siding with Islamist extremists and anti-Semites and is putting up candidates in local elections who are blatantly, outrageously, disgustingly racist against Jews?
Okay, so firstly, we have over 4,500 candidates. We've gone from a party 6 months ago that was 60,000 to now having 230,000. And so, of course, needs to be a more thorough vetting process. But it's not that those 30 candidates are being investigated for anti-Semitism. They're being investigated for a series of comments, some of them racist, some of them sexist, or the accusations of that. They haven't been found guilty of that. And a large proportion of them are guilty of being critical of the state of Israel. Some of them, of course, are anti-Semitic, but a lot of them aren't. I think,
but no one's being investigated for being critical of Israel.
That's not true. That's not true. The list was released by a Labour dossier this morning. I'm sure you've seen it, and they are, for example, retweeting the Bob Dylan lyrics about death to the IDF. I'm sorry, Julia, but that's not a crime. We're allowed to criticize and even call for the death of a foreign army. If I said death to the IRGC, should that be criminalized? If I said death to the Russian army, should that be criminalized? Should I be deselected as a Labour candidate or a Reform candidate?
The vast majority of these candidates are being investigated for, I wouldn't even say alleged. They have written on their public posts in social media or stated at public rallies on video. They have, including, by the way, the deputy leader, Mohsen Ali, who's, by the way, suggesting a lot of these people should be taking legal action. Some of the things that he has said and he has posted are highly questionable as well. Why do you support a party which has such a problem with anti-Semitism?
Look, Look, as I've already said,
you think it doesn't?
There's a lot of conflation here. A lot of them don't. Some of them do. So I don't think that those 30 candidates out of 4,500 is an indication. This is, I think also last week, for example, Labour put out this advertisement that said, that was Ofcom pulled down, that said, had a person read out all these tweets that by different reform candidates that were racist or sexist or whatever. I don't think that's an indication necessarily of what reform believes. I think this sort of cherry picking, and I don't think, do you think that therefore that makes reform a racist and sexist organization? Surely not. I think we should treat this in the same way. I think there are parties that have platforms, and those platforms are the policies upon which we run on. Individuals who may have tweeted things years ago out of a massive list of candidates, I think that is not an accurate representation of the party. And I think I would say the same thing for Labour. I'd say the same thing for reform. I think
when it continues to happen again and again and again, and you're saying it's a vetting problem, again, you could argue, why do those people think that the Green Party is the home for them?
Do you think that Reform is a racist and sexist party because of the dossier that was released by Labour last week?
But I think they do have a problem.
Why is it one rule? Why is it one rule for Reform and one rule for... No, but I didn't say the Green Party was anti-Semitic. I said you've got a problem with anti-Semitism. It's a different thing, isn't it? I don't think there's a problem with anti-Semitism. I think that a small proportion of candidates who've said things in the past, they're being now investigated.
There are questions about
candidates is an indication.
There are questions about the likes on posts and the retweeting of posts from not only Zach Polansky but also both deputy leaders as well. That would suggest there is an issue.
Tell me specifically.
There are so many pieces of paper in front of me.
There's so many.
I'll message you afterwards. But you will have seen them.
I want to know. Please inform your viewers. I haven't seen them. I'd like to know which leaders have
absolutely plenty of them. I'm desperately trying to find them right now. Well, I will.
I'm literally in the edge of my seat, Julia, waiting for you to give us this vital breaking news. The anti-Semites are running the party.
I'm held back by the fact I can't actually leave through things with plaster on my fingers, but there we are.
Oh no.
Well, these are issues. Green Party leader shared a conspiracy theory. Rachel Millward, co-deputy leader, shared a conspiracy theory about the Golders Green attack in which two men were stabbed. Shared a post which claimed a third victim of the day was Muslim and had been erased to suit a weaponised, desperate narrative. I mean, that's just one example. Mohsen Ali is...
Wait, but how is that an example? You just read out, for example, earlier, that there were two victims of that attack. In fact, there was 3 victims. The first victim was Muslim. Why is it an anti-Semitic or conspiratorial why haven't we mentioned that? The Prime Minister didn't mention that. The media hasn't mentioned that. There was the first victim was Muslim. Do Muslim lives not matter?
He wasn't hospitalised. I think that's one. The attack was aimed at Jews, is the viewpoint, pretty much. No. Anybody involved.
But why not even mention that a Muslim was attacked first? And he was hospitalized, actually. But, his name's Ismail Hussein. Mm-hmm. He was hospitalized. And we should name that his life matters, too. That's not anti-Semitic. That's not anti-Jewish hatred to simply mention the other person that was also stabbed.
Well, no, I think it's not the mention of it. It's the idea that the reason it's not mentioned is because of the conspiracy. Let's talk about.
Julia, let me just ask you. Do you think that people should that you should have mentioned that earlier in your program?
Talked about two on the day when I was on air on the Thursday after that event had happened and I went to Golders Green. There was only talk of 2 victims at the time.
But do you think it's a problem that we don't mention?
Only spoke about 2 victims at the time. If you want to take that up the Metropolitan Police, that's an issue, isn't it?
But then you've just given the story and you've only mentioned 2 of the victims. I think it.
Yeah.
3 were stabbed.
Okay, but the Met Police
you mention that?
and the Prime Minister.
The Met Police,
the Met Police and the Prime Minister keep talking about 2 Jewish men being stabbed.
Yeah, but you're a journalist. You're a leading journalist. You're a leading journalist in this country.
They weren't the people being targeted. Who was being targeted?
Who do you believe was being targeted? A Muslim and 2 Jewish people.
And you think the Muslim was targeted because he was Muslim?
Well, I don't know, but I don't think we should not mention that. I don't know the full
you've
story.
You've mentioned him, but there we are. Can I talk to you about? I've got very little time.
Maybe I'm guilty of conspiracy theories because I mentioned him.
Well, you think there's a conspiracy theory behind? I don't think there is, and I think suggesting there's
there's no conspiracy.
Okay, can I mention other? Can I talk about some other policies for the love of God, please, Ashok? We've got very little time. I mean, other policies. One of the things I'm asking our audience is about: has the bubble burst? Not just because Zach Polanski is actually facing some daylight. He's no longer being treated like he's a sort of Labrador who's just come in from a long walk and is cuddling up and want to tell us about his policies. The anti-Semitism allegations, the problems on that are being, being looked at, but also some of the more radical policies. Lots of people might love the idea of a wealth tax on 1% on assets above 10 million, but people also understand that in countries that have done these things, you see the wealthy leave and you don't end up making any more money. Net zero carbon electricity by 2030, 70% from wind. That means we're going to be sitting in the dark. A £15 an hour minimum wage for all ages means no one's going to be hiring a 16 or 17-year-old at all, and lots of businesses will simply go under because they can't afford even the current minimum wage and national insurance increase. Legalising heroin, decriminalising drug possession, legalising prostitution, open border policy and giving people a house if they come here, and no deportations. A 4-day working week with a 5-day pay pal. No, none of this is remotely workable or affordable. Isn't it the case that a lot of people, they want to vote against the existing parties? They feel let down, understandably, by the Tories and by Labour. But actually, the Greens haven't actually had to deliver on a workable manifesto because they've never had a chance of being elected. And now they're finally getting scrutiny. They're getting exposed for, frankly, a load of nonsense.
I don't know how I can respond to all that. But yeah, look, I think that what we've currently have happened in this country, which is austerity and the depression of wages, has not benefited the economy. We keep talking about growth, that growth model. And the IMF came out and said this 2 years ago. We had the lowest growth of the G20, lower than Russia. And so the program of the Tories and Labour of cutting benefits, cutting the state, cutting increases in wages, not boosting wages, that's not actually good. It doesn't entice capitalists to come here and invest. It actually depresses wages and depresses demand. Policies like increasing the minimum wage, and we see this in studies like the famous Cardin-Kruger study in 1996 from the US that said you increase the minimum wage, you see more circulation of capital at the lowest rung, and you actually see the boosting of the economy and more employment,
Only
not less
people
employment,
get employed.
which is counterintuitive. So I can't address every single point that you're making, but all I can say is that poll after poll shows that under 65-year-olds in this country, the Greens are winning.
They are doing well. Unfortunately, they're also the group of people, particularly young people, who don't actually bother turning out to vote. We shall see what happens. I'd love to talk to you again next week when we know the full results of these elections. And I always wish we had longer, Ashok, because there's so much to cover here. Dr. Ashok Kumar, Green Party activist, associate professor at Birkbeck University. It's coming up to 11:50. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk about jet fuel shortages. Is your holiday likely to be cancelled? And should there be a ban on the pre-flight beer? This is Talk.
means that it's all "you're amazing."
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 11:53 is the time. Philip Ingram, are you still with me? Just coming. Are you partial? We talked about this, but are you partial to a pre-flight pint of beer?
Well, I'll have a glass or two if I can. And if I'm very fortunate to be allowed into the lounge, there's some very nice drinks in some lounges.
Oh, he does the fancy drinking. Yes. Well, we have been told by Ryanair boss, he likes to put his tuppence worth in on everything, Michael O'Leary, that we need to ban the early morning pre-flight pint. We might not even be getting any of those opportunities for a pre-flight pint, get it right, if you actually end up seeing your flight cancelled to go on a holiday this summer. Anyway, let's talk about all of this with travel editor at The Sun, Lisa Minnow. Hello, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there.
Let's talk first of all about those flight cancellations, because a lot of these flights are being cancelled, and they've been cancelled nice and early, which is not a bad thing for us, people not having their flights cancelled on the day. But this is down to airlines saying they just don't know if they're going to have enough aviation fuel.
It's more likely that it's down to the fact that they don't know if they're going to have enough passengers and if it's going to be profitable enough, because obviously aviation fuel has rocketed in price. I think we need to put this into perspective. It's 13,000 flights globally. That represents about 1%, 1.45% of the global number of flights or seats that are going to be available in May. And it's no question that there is going to be some flight cancellations. Unprofitable routes have already been stripped out of a lot of schedules carriers' schedules. So the likes of Lufthansa, KLM, Air New Zealand, they've all done that. But at the same time, we're also hearing from our main tour operators, the likes of Jet2, EasyJet and EasyJet Holidays and TUI, that they're planning on running their full schedules this summer and they're not going to be adding a surcharge. So it is very difficult for a consumer in an environment where you've got all of these mixed messages to understand exactly what the situation is.
I mean, exactly. That expectation that people won't be flying to the Middle East, so more flights are going to be, people are going to be wanting to go on those flights closer to home. But this is the thing, isn't it? A lot of those flights that are being cancelled are actually flights which are near empty anyway. They're already not profitable, but they're airlines using up their slots, because basically if you don't use it, you lose it. And the government has changed the rules. So, you don't have to operate those flights which aren't profitable, which are basically, 3 people and the stewardess on, just so you can use up that slot so you can keep it for the future.
Yeah, and that was sensible. It was a really sensible move by the government, because we saw this in the pandemic. If you can't fly, there's no point in actually, making people adhere to these slot rules. So that's positive. But I think we just need to see a bit more clarity around the whole issue with, rather than it being the fact that we're being told on the one hand that, jet fuel supplies are low. On the other hand, we're seeing tour operators saying, look, we're running our full schedules. We haven't got an issue. I think the summer might be okay. If it continues on, I think that's
a different matter. The biggest problem people are going to have is actually the queues for the biometrics in lots of airports. Go to Greece, they're not going to be doing it. That's my top tip to people. Although I think Italy and Portugal are possibly going to be next on the list when they realise the chaos and how much that is putting people off booking flights. But here's the other thing. One of the things that also might put people off being on a flight is being surrounded by a load of drunks. I've been on enough flights, you've got the stag do or the hen do, and you think, oh my God, these people are out of control. The noise, the worry that someone drunk's going to do something stupid like try and open an aeroplane door. But it's really interesting. Michael O'Leary, Ryanair's chief executive, says they should end this whole pre-flight pint where people are getting absolutely bladdered in the airports where no licensing rules apply because it's airside, not landside. And basically a load of really drunk people are getting on flights, and he's saying, look, we've got this issue. We're constantly having to divert flights, get people off flights with the police. It's an issue. But what I don't understand is, why would that be an issue, given that it is actually a criminal offence for his stewards, his cabin crew, his flight attendant, to allow someone on a plane who is drunk?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, I think putting the blame on the airports and the pubs in airports is really not the way to deal with the situation. And I object to being told what the majority should do because of the incredibly small disruptive minority. Now, I'm not saying he's wrong that there has been an increase in disruption because of disruptive passengers. It's gone, he's saying, from once a week that they're having to divert a flight to once a day. But there must be other ways for us to be dealing with this, because they're still selling alcohol on those flights. You know, I mean, yes, they might be saying, oh, we're happy to just have it as two drinks on the flight as well. But they're all short-haul networks. People probably wouldn't be drinking more than 2 flights on a plane anyway.
I mean, you're lucky to get 2 drinks, Jim, by the time the service gets you. But the thing is, I remember I was a barmaid. It is illegal in Britain, and the Civil Aviation Authority, it is illegal to allow someone to get on a plane who is obviously inebriated. Doesn't matter whether they're shouting or leery. If they are clearly drunk, they're not allowed to get on the plane. So his staff, if they're letting people get on the plane drunk, or if they serve someone who is drunk, they're the ones breaking the law. You just simply say, sorry, mate, you know, you can all come, but your mate can't because your mate's drunk. You're not getting on. You forfeited the flight, not my problem. People will get the message.
Well, I think exactly that. I mean, if we spend a little less time looking at the size of people's luggage and a bit more time looking at exactly how they are and how they're behaving, I think that could definitely help with the problem. But I think it's more about the fact that you don't punish the majority for the actions of the minority. And I understand for Ryanair this must be very frustrating, but they are running an airline and they're serving drinks on board that airline as well. So it does, to my extent, it comes as part of the hazards of the job. They should be making sure, as you say, that drunk people are not getting onto their plane.
And a lot of their cabin crew can certainly have. I've been on an EasyJet plane where the guys have started doing, loads of guys on the stag do. They're quite drunk and they're doing press ups on top of the seats. I tell you what, one look from that cabin crew member, she was having none of it. Get back in your seats. And they looked like the headmistress had arrived. It was beautiful to see. The rest of us were clapping away. Anyway, great to talk to you, Lisa Minnow, travel editor at The Sun. By the way, that was Philip Ingram doing that. Anyway, plenty more coming up, including the brilliant, the wonderful Melanie Phillips up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Lots to talk about more on the show. And if you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. If you missed anything from the show, why would you do that? Go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about the fast tracking of hate crime prosecutions by the CPS, but the announcement from the Prime Minister yesterday about tackling anti-Semitism, and the Green Party being investigating more than 30 council candidates for alleged anti-Semitism, which had an activist of the party, Ashok Kumar, saying no, the party doesn't have a problem with it. These are a small number of those 4,000 plus candidates standing. But is that really true? Meanwhile, it has been revealed that a migrant hotel has an arcade-style video game room and even features an air hockey table. Because, my God, we need to look after these people in a Grade 2 listed hotel. Why are we still paying for this? Bring on the deportation camps, I say. And an investigation has found that, this is not going to come as a surprise to a lot of us. Civil servants are faking office attendance and even failing to set foot in the office, even though their work-from-home rules no longer allow them to work from home all the time. How are they getting away with it? Well, because the bosses are doing it too. We'll talk about that as well. Lots more coming up. Delighted to say Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, is still with me in the studio.
Hello.
The stories, I want you to know, the stories he tells on air about drinking on planes, not as good as the one he's telling me off air, just in case you're wondering. Interesting that. Although it's interesting, I think lots of people are worried about not air flying at the moment. They're worrying about getting cruises with this infected ship and other, deaths and people being removed and from them and not being allowed on Cape Verde and having to go to Canary Islands and all of that ongoing. Have you ever gone on a cruise ship?
No, I'm slightly. Well, I'm hesitant. Yes, I have actually. I've done a cruise in the Nile, and I've done what is ordinarily a ferry from Cyprus across to Egypt, but it was classed as a cruise because it was 2 nights.
Because it was a bit fancy schmancy.
But the cruise in the Nile was.
But this is one of the worries, isn't it? These are places. We saw this at the start of COVID. These are places which can incubate.
The mobile petri dishes.
It's the buffet. It's the buffet that'll do it for you.
Interestingly, the cruise ship that went on the Nile, the first tour that they did for all the guests, there were a very small number of guests on it, was down into the kitchens and showed just how they emphasised just how clean everything was and how the food was brought in fresh.
Meanwhile, they brought a load of dirty guests in, but there we are. Exactly. Anyway, let's talk about something I think, rather more important in terms of our country. Obviously, 20 Brits are on this boat and we have seen deaths, but I want to ask you and my audience what you make of Zach Polanski's Green Party. Has the bubble burst amid, crucially, these anti-Semitism claims, radical policies finally getting a little bit of sunlight on them and actually being examined? And also, of course, his criticism of the Metropolitan Police. There's incredibly brave, heroic officers who tackled the suspected knife man in Golders Green last week, and his criticism almost immediately retweeting someone who was sort of querying what had happened, and he's doubled down, saying he shouldn't have been on social media about it, but doubling down on his concern for how this man was treated, claiming falsely, actually, to Radio 4 this morning that the man was handcuffed at the time that he was kicked in the head. He most certainly was not handcuffed at the time. They were trying to subdue him. But anyway, we've been told by a Green Party activist that no, they don't have an anti-Semitism problem. We've been told again and again by Labour that they want to tackle anti-Semitism and that the Prime Minister says this is a crisis for us all after yet another meeting, yet another summit about how he's going to tackle this issue yesterday. Let's talk about this now with somebody who has been highlighting this issue, raising the flag on this issue, putting a big neon sign saying we need to tackle this issue for a number of years in numerous columns and numerous books as well. She is Melanie Phillips, columnist at the Times newspaper, also author of Fighting the Hate, a handbook for Jews under siege, her most recent book. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to see you, Julia.
I don't even know where to start because there's so much to talk about. Can we start, first of all, with the Prime Minister? Because, he is the man in charge right now. He's held these meetings. He's done a lot of hand-wringing. He's given statements. He visited Golders Green, couldn't get out of his car, not within gates, unless he was at inside gates because of the booing and the chants of, Keir Starmer, Jew harmer at him for his failure to act on anti-Semitic attacks today. He's now certainly saying all the right things. He's bringing in, heads of NHS and schools and the arts and the police, and saying we need to take more action. He's talking about fast tracking hate crimes prosecutions, a terror law to treat Iranian proxies as foreign spies, an Iranian-backed group claiming, although no evidence as yet, being backed behind this crime last week. Do you think that he, A, is doing enough, and B, means what he says?
Well, on the latter point, I think he is sincere. I think he is sincerely horrified by the anti-Semitism that he sees around. I don't think he has the faintest idea of the extent of it, but nevertheless what he sees has genuinely alarmed him. As to what he's doing about it, it's pathetic. He simply will not face the key issues. It's no good having people in universities, the police, the NHS, and saying, you've got to do better. I want to see lists of people that you are dealing with and do this, do that. And I want to see progress. This is rubbish. They won't do it because the problem lies in these institutions, in their failure or refusal to even accept what they're seeing is anti-Jewish or anti-Zionist. People don't realize that anti-Zionism in itself is really terrible. The idea that, you have Jewish patients in the NHS who are now frightened to go and seek treatment because they may find a nurse wearing a Palestine pin badge is an indication of the seriousness of it. But it's no good just exhorting. He has to take action. He has to hold the university's feet to the fire. He has to say, I will take action against you if you don't clean up your act. And the real problem is, however, even beyond that he needs to hold people's feet to the fire, is that he is not identifying the problem properly. He won't call it out. He won't call out the reasons why this terrible upsurge of anti-Semitism has happened. Now, there are many reasons, and there are different constituencies involved. But a key constituency is the Muslim community. We all know not all Muslims are terrible people. On the contrary, they are upstanding people. But there's a vast number who are not. And this
It's a minority, but it is according to all the data, a very large minority.
Yes, the Muslim community, or the Muslim world across the world, has a serious, enormous and disproportionate problem with Jews. We know that. And that's true in Britain as well. And this is not even being acknowledged.
He didn't actually mention Islamist extremism, I think, until yesterday.
Right. Well, Islamist extremism is one thing, but this goes far beyond Islamist extremists. This is something which, one or two very brave Muslims have called this out and have said, the Muslim community just isn't standing up to this, isn't identifying it as something to be fought within their own community. But the problem goes much broader than the Muslim community. The problem is in Britain's own society, and it's encapsulated, I'm afraid, by the Prime Minister himself. Decent as he may be, concerned about anti-Semitism as he may be, he has fueled this. What has fueled this mainly since October 7 is the perception that Israel is not just behaving badly, but is behaving in a demonic fashion by starving Gazan civilians, by killing vast numbers of them wantonly, by killing children, killing babies, doing these terrible things which make them not just wrong, not just to be opposed, but make them positively demonic, Nazi. Now, the Prime Minister has never said, not once has he said, this whole thing is a tissue of lies, that the Israelis are behaving as well as they possibly could be expected to do in these circumstances.
And at a higher standard than British Army behaves.
And much better, but that basically they are conducting a war of self-defense against a genocidal onslaught, and it is simply obscene and completely ludicrous and wrong for anybody to call this genocide. And those who are calling it genocide have to bear responsibility for the hatred and violence they are potentially unleashing. He has never said that Instead, he has led his government in recognizing a state of Palestine, which is a fictitious thing in itself, for which the Hamas thanked him as a reward. It was perceived as a reward for the attacks of October 7, 2023. And he didn't stop during this war in Gaza. He didn't stop suggesting that Israel was behaving appallingly, that it was killing too many people, that it had to stop immediately. In other words, he has fueled the flames of anti-Semitism by himself promoting in great measure the lie.
Even though, actually, interestingly, a government report put out very quietly said it did not agree with, other organisations that had claimed there was a genocide in Israel, in Gaza.
Good gracious, to say, I don't agree that there is a genocide. I mean, if anybody had said, if people had said, I don't agree that the Ukrainians are responsible for attacking Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, people would have said, well, this is ludicrous. Of course people don't agree. It's not even a thing.
But it isn't true. I just want to tackle that, and also another point you made there. But again, this is at the root of this, isn't it? Because the argument is often made that, and you said earlier, anti-Zionism itself is terrible. Those are your words. People say, but I'm not an anti-Jew. I'm not an anti-Semitic. I'm anti-Zionist, and we're entitled to criticise the state of Israel. I'm sure you would agree. I live in Israel. People are absolutely entitled. Indeed, many Israelis criticise the state of Israel. It's a vibrant democracy where lots of criticism of Netanyahu and the government and government policies and the like. That is completely not only allowed, it is to be encouraged in a democracy.
Absolutely.
Why do you say, though, anti-Zionism is equally, is as terrible?
Well, first of all, criticism of Israel is right. That should be absolutely. There's no problem with that. But the problem is that it's not criticised like any other country. It is subjected to a campaign of demonization based on falsehoods and malevolent lies in order to destroy it, and not just destroy the current state of Israel, but to destroy the liberation movement that actually set it up, which is Zionism. Now, Zionism is simply the self-determination of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland. Now, if you are an anti-Zionist, then you are singling out the Jewish people for having no right at all to have their own homeland in their own ancestral homeland. And that itself is discrimination, it's bigotry, there's no reason for it except for malice. And to single out the state of Israel as it's being singled out for attack, again, distinguishes it from the way in which any other country is treated. But the other point about Zionism is this, that people say, well, I'm not anti-Jew because I'm just anti-Zionism, which is a kind of political ideology. Well, it is and it isn't. Political Zionism, as we know it, did start up in the late 19th century around Theodor Herzl and so on. But Zionism, which is the ability of the right of the Jewish people to have their own homeland in the state of Israel, that is part of Judaism. You see, the religion of Judaism is an inseparable fusion of the people, the faith, and the land. The religion dictates, or the religion holds, that the Jewish people are bound by divine commandment to live in a certain way and to follow certain precepts in the land of Israel. Now, that doesn't mean that all Jews should live in Israel, otherwise they're not Jews. That's ridiculous. It doesn't mean that all Jews have to be observant religiously. They still remain Jews. You can be a Jew and not be religious. You can be a Jew and not live in Israel, of course. But Judaism itself is... it's not
it's bound up with Israel. I mean, one of the interesting things I often find is people, we talk about, Palestinian homeland, Jewish homeland. A lot of it is based on a lot of blatantly simple historical ignorance when people say, the Palestinians were there first. I mean, the Muslims were there first. Well, they couldn't have been, because Islam wasn't invented until 1,000+ years after Judaism, and you only have to go to Jerusalem to see which order churches, palaces, and temples and mosques are in, to know which order they were. But this is the thing: people say, look, you're entitled to criticise this country and their policies, and a lot of this, you say, based on holding Israel to a completely different standard and for things which they have not done. There's no doubt at all. It is simply it's a matter of fact. There has not been a genocide in Gaza. One of the giveaways of that is the fact that the population, in terms of the non-combatant and the combatant death ratio, better than any war ever fought, but also the fact that 2 million Palestinians are still alive. If there's one thing we know about the Israeli Defence Forces, they're a very efficient and very well equipped force. If they wanted to commit a genocide in Gaza, they could easily have done that and would have done it in a matter of days. And here we are a few years on. And yet, Zach Polanski, I want to bring it on to him. He this morning wasn't challenged on this by Nick Robinson on the BBC. He said, and we know how big this issue is for Green Party voters now. No one mentions tree hugging anymore. Is it saving the environment? This is all about Gaza. Even in a local election, talked about the ongoing genocide in Gaza, which is quite bizarre given we're months after a ceasefire and most of Gaza is controlled by Hamas. Wasn't challenged on it at all either. Do you think the media are part of the problem in this, in terms of the growth of a party that is supposedly the nice cuddly party because they want to look after babies in Palestine, which is how the party seems to be garnering support at the moment?
Well, it is just beyond belief that the insanity of alleging genocide, when anyone with two eyes can see that it's not happening, it's very hard to credit that. And certainly the media generally, with some honourable exceptions, has not called this out properly. It's been very weak in its approach to this whole genocide canard. It's not said of the people who are using the word, like Zach Polanski, that it's just insane. It's just completely ludicrous. What on earth is he talking about? But the media has, I'm afraid, a far greater responsibility in this whole terrible upsurge of anti-Semitism. Because, again, with some very honourable exceptions, generally, month in, month out, year in, year out, the media leaves the British public really in the dark about the Middle East, about Israel's behaviour, about Jewish history in the land, and it presents basically Hamas propaganda, Palestinian propaganda, and I'm afraid to say Iranian propaganda, as if it's credible and worthy of belief, while ignoring or dismissing or calling into question what the Israelis are saying. And it presents also such a terribly skewed idea of what's going on, in that month in, month out, it has never adequately or even at all reported the persecution of Israelis who are being attacked, injured and murdered in continuing numbers in Israel itself, in what's called the West Bank, the rockets that were coming over from Gaza year after year. There wasn't a single report of this in the British media. And when Israel finally gets it together to respond and to go into a war to defend itself, because these attacks become too terrible, it's presented always as Israeli aggression. Not surprisingly, people regard it as aggression because they've not been told that how Israel is being attacked. Yeah. And that also happened after the October 7 attacks. Israel made a war of self-defense, which was rapidly presented as a war of aggression. This is wicked stuff. This is not just media bias. This is media malice.
Why do you think that we do see the biggest spikes in anti-Semitic attacks, not just here, but in mainland Europe, in Australia, all well documented, after other attacks. So Bondi Beach attack, there's a rise in attacks. The Heaton Park synagogue attack in Manchester last October, spike in attacks following that. After October the 7th, a spike in attacks almost immediately, before Israeli forces had even entered Gaza, before the first Israeli missile was sent and hostages were brought home. Why do you think that is?
The reason why people see it as aggression after an attack is it is said it's because Israel's behaving badly. Well, it's not. It's because Israel is reported in a malevolent way, which presents it as literally demonic in the way it's responding to being attacked. It's not surprising that if people are given this impression, they become enraged. I mean, if I didn't know anything about it, I would be enraged by the picture that is painted of Israel. But there is something even worse going on here, which is not specifically to do with the media, but it's more that it's a terrible thing to say, but when Israel is attacked, there is a kind of glee that takes over and that inspires more attacks. So, this rise in anti-Semitism, which has been going on actually for a very long time before October 7, before those attacks in Israel. But what we saw from October 7 was a kind of ecstatic delirium, particularly in the Muslim
dancing community. In the streets.
Yeah, because you see, it was like, my goodness, we've done it. We've breached the defenses. Israel, and everybody thought Israel was impregnable. We've actually breached their defenses. This is a great day because it means that we're now on course to destroy Israel altogether. And after we've destroyed Israel, we're coming for the West.
Globalising the Intifada is what it means. Do you think the likes of Zach Polanski is very much in the news? And we're asking a question about him today to our audience about his, the anti-Semitism claims. Some 30 candidates who are being investigated over anti-Semitism by the party themselves. Some celebrating October the 7th attacks, calling Jews vermin, rats, you name it. I mean, it's just some extraordinary stuff. Do you think he is? And he's a Jew himself. He often says, "But I'm Jewish. I can't be anti-Semitic." Is he just another useful idiot for the Islamist cause?
Well, first of all, I'm afraid to say that the idea that if you're Jewish, you can't be an enemy of the Jewish people is simply false. I'm afraid Jewish history is absolutely studied throughout the centuries with Jews who have led the charge for the enemies of the Jewish people, who have slaughtered them in great number. Karl Marx was born a Jew, or his family baptized him, but he was born a Jew. And he was a virulent anti-Semite who said that his ideal society would be one without a single Jew in it. Now, it's not a coincidence, I think, that the ideologies we're talking about that fuel people like Zach Polanski and people on the hard left, I mean, these ideologies derive from Marxism, which presents Jews as behind capitalism and responsible for all the ills of the world. Now, as you say, Zach Polanski is a Jew. What does he think he's doing? I can't answer that question. I'm not inside his brain. But it seems to me that he is just cynically riding two tigers. One is the hard left, which is supported in great measure unfortunately, by so many young people. And the other is the Muslim community, for whom, as we can see, large numbers of them believe that Gaza is the issue on which they're going to vote for people to empty their bins on Thursday.
We all care about bin collections in Gaza, Melanie. Didn't you know that? Time is against us. We'll have to leave it there. It's always fascinating to talk to you. Melanie Phillips, thank you for joining us. She's a columnist at The Times. She's also author of Fighting the Hater, Handbook for Jews Under Siege, author of many other books on this issue. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, was a lot of nodding. And you and I have talked about so many of these issues so many times. But again, we talk, the linking Jews and Israeli policy and Gaza and that. That is what the conflation of all these things is where we are right now.
It is, and when we get into anti-Semitism in this country, whenever you get Keir Starmer recognising the state of Palestine, he is as guilty as anyone else at
literally rewarded
continuing to push this.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the accusations of genocide and the targeting that's going on, I just urge people to go out and try and find a post that was put up by General John McCall. General John, I know well. He went on a trip to Israel and he was sceptical. He had seen what was in the press. He thought that genocide was going on. He examined the targeting process and he came back a changed man, going, no, actually they're putting in more care than we do.
And he was got access to what they were doing.
And he got access to what they're doing, and he went out there with the firmly of the mind they're committing genocide. They are operating outside the laws of warfare.
Hamas's own figures. Hamas's own figures in terms of the number of combatants and non-combatants who have died in Gaza, their own figures tell you it was a genocide. Their own figures tell you there is no other country fighting a war ever in the history of the world, especially in such difficult terrain as highly populated cities with buildings which, by the way, have all been set up with IEDs by Hamas and operating coming out of tunnels. There is no other country in the world whose army has actually delivered such few civilian deaths. Full stop. End of. That is not a matter for debate. That is fact. Based on Hamas's own figures. So if you want to believe Hamas, you can. I mean, there are many things I want the BBC to apologise for over the years. This is the big one for me. I really do. Yeah. And they still haven't. And if they genuinely believe this stuff, they've got no business being journalists because they don't do facts. If you don't want to do facts, you shouldn't be a journalist. End of story. Going to get your calls. A lot of you calling in about VE Day and 2/3 of youngsters not knowing what VE Day represents. How are we in this mess? Well, mainly because our young people are filled with the nonsense about Gaza for a start. We'll talk about that up next. We'll take your calls. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000 if you want to have your say. This is Talk.
Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised and it's terrifying and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Coming up, we are going to be talking about civil servants faking when they're working from home, ever actually going into the office. What a surprise, no one gets anything done in our public sector anymore. And we'll talk to the former head of the UK Border Force, our favourite, Tony Smith, about the latest migration madness. That's coming up after your calls. 0344 499 1000. Lots of you getting in touch, been asking about Zach Palensky. Lots of texts and tweets about that. Just quickly, has his bubble burst? David says only Liberals with no knowledge of how the world works will continue to support this moron. Rob says if any Green Party supporter wants a preview of Zach Palensky in authority, look at the New York mayor. They're very similar. This is true. I think Mam Daniel, though, is actually very clever. I'm not sure Palensky is. Steve says the party is a Trojan horse for radical Islam taking root in British politics. Already did that with Corbyn, I'm afraid. Liz says, why have the mainstream media taken so long to call this monster out? A very good point. Don't worry, we have, of course, asked many times for Zach Palensky to come on the show. He did come on a few years ago, but he was just a mere spokesperson for, I don't know, Just Stop Oil or something. I mean, he probably wasn't even a spokesperson for them. He wasn't a spokesperson for the British Red Cross when he claimed to be. John says simply, they are bonkers. We'll leave it with that. Let's go to some calls now, both of them actually on VE Day. Georgina is in London. A very, very good morning. So good afternoon to you, Georgina. What do you want to say about the fact that 2/3 of people under the age of 30 don't know what VE Day actually marks?
Well, I just want to say firstly, good morning, Julia. Good morning, Philip.
Afternoon.
Good morning.
You just copied me. It's afternoon.
Good afternoon, yes.
Afternoon. Oh, it's the gin. It's the gin.
Georgina's had a few gins in the airport before a flight, I'll guess.
It's a tragedy to think that our younger generation doesn't understand the importance of VE Day, Julia.
Yes.
Our best fought and they died to give us the luxury of our freedom, and to think that they are being deliberately forgotten is a moral failing of our educational systems and our government. You can't erase the great out of Britain, no matter how hard you try, and believe me, they're still trying now. We've always been a nation of lions, of British bulldogs. We've always fought for our democracy. We've always fought to protect the weak and the infirm, and we'll never change. We were a military powerhouse, Julia, on the world stage. Our military prowess was copied and admired the world over. We should honour and protect and be proud of our history and our flag, as this is the flag that our servicemen died for. And this pride must be instilled into our younger generation, every one of them. Our children should be taught about the sacrifices made by our brave servicemen and women, and we should celebrate their victories with pride now and forever. To think that they are being deliberately erased from our history in schools, colleges and universities is an insult to every serviceman that fought or died for our country. And these institutions and our government should be ashamed of themselves for deliberately erasing their memory from the hearts of our children.
Amen to every word. But I think the key word you said there, deliberately, it's not by accident, it is deliberate.
It is deliberate, Julia. And when we think that our children in schools now are being taught about Palestine and Gaza, it makes me physically sick to think that they don't know how great our Britain is.
Yep.
And we need to change that.
Absolutely, Georgina. Couldn't agree with you more. I'm sure so much of our audience do. No, Philip does. I'll get your reaction to what we've heard from Kevin, who's in North Yorkshire. Kevin, you also want to talk about VE Day?
How do you follow Georgina?
Yeah.
I'm sure her surname is Churchill. I wouldn't be surprised to hear it. No, it's a pleasure to follow. Good morning, good afternoon. I just wanted to say that, following on from what Georgina said, at the end of the day, it's a radical left long-term plan to take over education, and they've succeeded.
Yeah.
They will all these generation, that we're discussing. They'll all know about Rosa Parks. They'll all know about that. They'll all know about. They won't know about somebody like Ignacio Sancho, a young black man rescued from slavery in the 1700s, who was rescued by the British, brought to Britain, became a renowned writer and composer. And he was the very first black man to vote in a British election, and that was in the 1700s. And that was before even most men were allowed to vote.
Yeah, you had to have property,
And yet none of them will know about that. Gainsborough painted him. There's a famous painting. And this is the type of thing that our children are denied, the history, the gratitude that they should hold for such things. And they just know nothing about it. And it's my generation that's guilty. I mean, I'm approaching 60 from the wrong side. you know, it's our generation that's let this happen.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that it's returned back to its normality.
I think a lot of people are completely unaware what happened in comprehensive schools from the 70s onwards, and just again the complete takeover by the left of our schools, of our teaching colleges. And, absolutely, Kevin and Georgina. I mean, just superb, knowledgeable, fantastic calls with passion. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to have your say, and I just like to put all our school children in front of them. Philip, I mean, you were actually, Georgina, you'll love this. He was saluting while you were speaking, Georgina.
I was sitting to attention and saluting, because Georgina was, she was a Churchillian in what she was describing and the way she was describing it.
You would follow her into battle.
Oh, 100%, spot on.
Yeah, and this stuff matters. People go, you flag shaggers. No, that's what they'll go. No, this is about important. Knowing your history, knowing your values, knowing what you stand for, knowing what your country has been about, is about, and will be going forward. It's having a moral sort of structure and foundation.
There's an old adage: history has a habit of repeating itself, and it does. And if we don't understand our history, then you don't learn the lessons of history to stop it happening again.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be talking about that aspect of things. So with Tony Smith up next, when we're talking about a migrant hotel with an arcade-style video games room and an air hockey table as well, because there's nothing too good for those fellas on those dinghies. We'll talk about that with Tony Smith up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. Let's talk right now to Tony Smith, he's former head of the UK Border Force, who joins us to talk about the latest migrant freebies. Very good afternoon to you, Tony.
Afternoon, Julia.
I know you would have been listening to what my last two callers, Georgina and Kevin, had to say. It's one of those interesting things, but a border force. Quite crucial for the nation state to have a history, to have a current, and to have a future. You do need to have borders, because a nation without borders and border controls, therefore, isn't a country, is it?
So proud of that uniform, Julia. When I served 40 years. It was the immigration service when I joined it, then we merged with customs, came to border force. But I was so proud to wear that uniform, go and get my medal from the Queen when I'd done my time.
Right.
There was a real patriotism in public service in the border force. But we are, as you and I explained, we are very much subject to legal and political constraints about what the Border Force can and cannot do. So I'll quite often do a lot of this media stuff just to try and defend the Border Force. Say, actually, you know, a lot of those people will be listening to your show. They'll be supporting what those people are saying, but they can't. Not that talk to you.
No.
So I'll come and talk to you, Julia.
No, well, that's why we appreciate you doing it. Well, look, we've had an awful lot of talk about of migrant issues, whether it's illegal migration, but also legal migration as well. But in particular, illegal migration, we've got, I mean, the latest migrant hotel scandal. We've got images from inside Birmingham's Grade 2 listed Roughton Hotel revealing pool tables and a communal leisure area, an arcade-style video games room and an air hockey table, all of which, by the way, have been moved in since the 300 young male inhabitants who use the facilities have been moved in. They weren't there before. They've got a security guard and they've got, of course, the taxpayers footing the bill for all of this. I thought we were told that they were not going to be in these fancy hotels anymore and they weren't going to be getting all these facilities, but we're paying for them all.
Yeah, so they should never have been in hotels in the first place, Julia. This goes back to a judgment back in my day where we were held, the Home Office were told that you cannot leave asylum seekers destitute in this country. You have to accommodate and support them whilst you're considering their claims. That's where it all began, the National Asylum Support Service back in the early noughties this was. And so we never, ever planned to put them in hotels. They were supposed. We did acquire accommodation from authorities around the country. There was a whole unit dedicated to doing that. But then the hotels were only supposed to be a temporary fix because we ran out of asylum accommodation. It was meant to be a temporary emergency measure. That we would move into because hotels now has become a complete epidemic in this country. We should not be putting them in hotels.
But a lot of hotels were very pleased because in the post sort of lockdown era, people weren't travelling, people got out of the habit, people didn't have money, and a lot of these hotels would have gone under. I mean, my local Holiday Inn, they were saying, "Oh, we closed for refurbishment because they had no business." And then they reopened, but not as a proper hotel, as an asylum hotel. A lot of them will just say, "Well, this is our bread and butter now."
Yeah, but hotels aren't for that.
No, exactly.
Hotels are for our community. They're for tourism. They're for community weddings. And they're part of the community. That's why you're seeing them protests. These are our hotels for our communities. They're not supposed to be used for. Now, the government have said, to be fair to them, we're going to try and reduce the number of hotels. That's what they're saying. They have got it down a bit, but they're moving them into houses and not.
But that's the thing. I've got to be honest with you. I'd rather have them in hotels than have them dotted around in just random bedsits in the street.
So you'd rather not have them at all in the community. I think this is where we come back to, don't we, Julia, every time, is that why are we granting temporary admission to vast numbers of undocumented migrants coming across in dinghies from France? I think the figure's going to break 200,000 later on this week.
Well, realistically today, depending on the weather in the channel, because we don't know
maybe today, whatever. But I mean, that's 200,000 people that have come here without a passport, without a permission, on a dinghy. It is illegal entry. Don't care what all the lawyers say. It's an offence, an illegal entry. And then what do? Well, the vast majority of them are given temporary admission into these places and ultimately would be allowed to stay. You've got to break that cycle, Julia. How many more times have we got to say?
I mean, you and I have talked about this a million times. What do you make of the reform announcement at the weekend, which I've said did tickle me rather, that they wanted to deport some 600,000 people. By the way, that doesn't touch the sides of all the people who've illegally overstayed visas as well, and all the people of the backlog, but they get it from the lorries and the like. 600,000 people, but they'll need detention camps, 24,000 at a time, number of detention camps around the country. But the plan would be, they said, if you vote in a Reform Council, Reform MP at the next election, you won't have a detention camp in your area, but we will prioritise putting them in green areas, given that the Green Party say they want open borders to the extent that no one would be deported and it would just basically be a free-for-all for anyone to come here. What do you make of, I suppose, both that reform policy and the Green policy?
So this has always been the dilemma, Julie, with borders is, some people don't want any borders at all. Other people want to put a wall around the country and not let anyone through at all. And your landing point politically is always somewhere along that spectrum from one extreme to the other. The trouble that reform are going to have is that, the detention estate has been absolutely decimated over the last 10 years for immigration. Like, we've got immigration detention beds. Last time I checked, there's about 2,300. Half of those have gone to foreign national prisoners because the prisons are all full. And so we haven't got anywhere to detain people. Now, you want to start saying, saying, well, we're going to build hundreds of camps all around the country. Well, how are you going to do that? I mean, where
What
are
do you mean, how are you going to do that?
You've got to get planning permission.
No, they can bring in a law, they can prevent that. How do you get permission for the Nightingale hospitals? There will be, you won't even need to pay people. There'll be volunteers queuing round the block to build those camps. I will.
I know, Julia, but I tell you, it is going to not happen on day one.
No, of course
They're
not.
going to have a lot of things that they're going to promise. I think that they're on the right lines on what they're saying, but this is a long-term strategy.
But isn't the fact that and if there were, whatever party it was, a Democratic elected government in this country, the fact that they would not, for a number of years, be able to, because of the legal shenanigans, to do something that was expressly in their manifesto, that is part of the issue we've got, that our hands have been tied to such a ridiculous extent that we can't do what the majority of people in this country want, which is that people who have no right to be here are no longer here.
Yeah, because there's a Gordian knot been tied around this entire process, which has been tied up for the last 20 years, certainly since I've left, which means that the border has been handed over to other people, not the border force. It is a legal and constitutional issue that all you've got to do when you arrive on our shores illegally without a document, know who you are, claim asylum, claim human rights, and you're in pretty well, Julia. How are you going to stop that? You've got to introduce laws much tougher than the last government did. That did not go far enough to illegal migration. I worked on that for a while. I can see why Rob Jenrick disappeared, because he was immigration minister. You listen to him, it said he resigned as immigration minister because the Sunak government did not go far enough on the IMA. Safety of Rwanda, all that stuff's now been abolished. So you've really got to start again. So, I think we're saying the right things to people. It's what people will want to hear, but they need to be careful about what is their plan for first 100 days, first 6 months, first year. Don't over-promise.
Yeah, but that's because people are going to be disappointed. I agree with you on that. Just ask you, finally, Home Secretary Shannon Mood, who's talked the talk on a lot of these issues, upset quite a lot on the left of her party. But she said she wants more refugees to come to Britain through safe and legal routes. Once, she says, the Labour Party has fixed, in her words, the broken asylum system. She said she wants to be able to go much bigger on safe and legal routes for refugees. That's one of the reasons she's determined to crack down on illegal migration. Now, one of the issues that people say, there are actually, for a lot of the countries that people are coming from on the boats, that actually there is no method by which they can apply for asylum unless they're already in the country, and wants to solve that. But does that solve the issue, given that most of the people who would be able to get asylum would be families, those who've specifically been persecuted, and then that would mean all of these young men, many of whom are simply economic migrants, would still be coming on the boats anyway because they wouldn't get asylum through the safe legal route?
Yeah, so I like what Shabana Mahmood's been doing in the Home Office. I said that to you before, Jude. I think within the confines of her party policies, she's working hard to try to get a grip on the problem. But the problem, as you say, is actually we've got to... She says she's only going to do this when she's fixed the broken system. I don't think she's going to be able to fix the broken system to start off with. I mean, if you were able to fix the system, you had nobody arriving in this country illegally, then there is a system through the United Nations High Commission of Refugees. I worked on this where, we would get that... Most people fleeing persecution are either still living in their own country, a different part of it, internally displaced, we call that, or own the next country, neighbouring country. Lots and lots of vulnerable people, women, kids. We have gone out there and blown them in on legal routes and placed them in communities who are now fine, upstanding members of the community. I like that idea, actually, Julia. That we would bid for that. So would the Americans, the Australians. Back in the day, we did that. That we'd love to get back. But the whole thing's been handed over to international organised criminals now who are running the show. And publicly, it's simply not acceptable to start bringing more and more people in through legal routes if you've not got a grip with that.
We're done. We're done, is all I can say. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, thank you so much. Got a little bit of a statement from the Home Office. This government is removing incentives drawing illegal migrants to Britain and ramping up removals of those with no right to be here. That is why we are closing every asylum hotel and moving asylum seekers into basic accommodation, including ex-military sites. Numbers in asylum hotels have dropped by nearly 20% over the past year and by 45% since the peak under the previous government, driving down support costs by almost £1 billion. It's a small drop in the ocean, guys. It's not going to fly with us. Your response, Philip Ingram?
Yeah, well, I saw a fantastic post which said if the hotels were saved by putting asylum seekers into hotels after lockdown, let's save the airlines now by putting them onto the airlines and flying them home. home.
Beautiful. By the way, Truth social site that Donald Trump has just posted on regarding the Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and where we are with negotiations with Iran. It's one of those thank you for your attention to this matter posts, which usually mean they actually have some substance to them. He's written, assuming Iran agrees to what has been agreed to... assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary epic fury, that is the actual war against Iran, will be at an end, and the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to be open to all, including Iran. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be sadly at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. Quick response to that, Philip, because basically saying there's a lot of talk coming out of Pakistan that there is some sort of deal on the table, basically saying if Iran agrees to it and actually does what it says it will do, then that's fine. The blockade ends, things go back to normal, the war ends. But if they don't, then it's going to restart on a much greater scale.
Well, my response is, a post that allegedly comes from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Navy, which says transit through the Straits of Hormuz is now secure, citing an end to US threats and the introduction of new procedures. In its first response to the US halting assistance to stranded ships, the Guards did not detail the measures, but thanked the ship's owners and captains for complying with Iranian rules.
I don't know what that means.
Yes, well, that is them building on that statement.
Okay.
So clearly there were negotiations going on in the background, and it appears to be some
hope.
movement.
That's good hope for our cost of living as well. 12:51 is the time. Let's take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about, those civil servants who will work from home, don't have to come into the office. And they're told they do have to go into the office. Turns out they're faking that. It's no wonder that the public sector's in the mess it's in. We'll talk about that up next with the Taxpayers Alliance. This is Talk.
Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. Running a little bit late, as I often do. 12:54 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest. He's Benjamin Elks from the Taxpayers Alliance, here to talk about, well, civil servants, the ones who, work from home, wink, 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 but who actually told you have to go into the office, who are now faking office attendance and failing to set foot in the office for years on end. A very good afternoon to you, Benjamin.
Good afternoon, Julia. Great to be with you.
This is extraordinary, isn't it? Whistleblowers, it's a Telegraph investigation. They've exposed a work-from-home scandal gripping the public sector. And basically, civil servants, and often, those Whitehall, quite well-paid ones, not going in the office, despite being told you need to be in a certain number of days a week, at least 3 days a week. And like they all take, what a surprise, Monday and Friday off. And simply not turning up or pretending they've been in the office when they haven't. What on earth's going on, and how is this being allowed to happen?
Yeah, this is really quite an extraordinary story. So we've had reports of people essentially going along to nearby car parks in order to connect to the Wi-Fi and then heading off home. We've got people turning up for a couple of hours and then disappearing from the office. So they are essentially, as you say, sort of faking appearing in the office, and they're only expected in 3 days a week.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a lot to ask.
You're not having to get up early on a Monday morning. What I love is that the senior managers at HMRC, where this is a massive issue, they call it a drive-by login. I mean, on one level, I kind of admire their creative thinking. If only they could apply that level of thinking to their job.
Exactly, yeah, we might not be in such a mess that we're currently in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the HMRC one's a fantastic example. There are over 3,000 people who haven't been in the office for between 6 and 11 months. And at the same time, you've got there was a report out showing that 44,000 people were on hold to HMRC for more than an hour and then got cut off. So this is clearly having an impact on,
of course it is,
on performance.
And we've seen that. I mean, post-COVID, this whole sort of thing. Well, people are working from home, but they're working much more efficiently. The stats don't show that. And again, if they were working much more efficiently, then the phone calls would be answered, wouldn't they? Because they wouldn't be in meetings. They wouldn't have to be walking to the coffee machine at the other end of the office. We would see the impact. And what is so obvious to us is that how many of those private firms who said, oh, no, this all works brilliantly, Google, the big banks, they all, within a year or two, went, yeah, we need you all back in the office because we don't think you're doing anything, basically. And these are companies where they actually need to deliver. And the reality is, in a lot of these places, these public sector offices, no one is delivering.
Exactly, it's a total nonsense. And the size of the civil service itself has continued to grow. It's gone up by over 130,000 in the last 10 years. So there are now about 550,000 civil servants in the country, and a cost of £21 billion a year. And this is all being shouldered by taxpayers who are just getting worse and worse services. Things aren't improving. And then we have these stories of, as you say, these civil servants being very creative in finding ways to get around doing the bare minimum.
I mean, there is a point. I mean, again, when I write a column, I much prefer to be at home on my own in silence. Right, and I've got a desk, but we hot desk in this office because we've got so many different shifts. I don't have a desk after I finish the show. I don't have anywhere I can sit and work, and certainly not somewhere quiet. There's an argument for people having some time if there are certain projects they're doing, certain what they're doing. Working from home, got no problem with that. But the reality is, an awful lot of people are just simply not leaving their homes at all, or, as is often the case, they're walking the dog, they're in the supermarket, they're doing other things. Well, you're not doing your job if you're walking your dog, are you?
Exactly. And as I say, they are only expected in 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So they still get 2 days at home where they can have that sort of, if they are actually working, then they've got that quiet space and the opportunity to do it. But as you say, I suspect a large number of them are doing sort of the household chores that they don't want to do on their weekends. They are out walking the dog, doing anything